Hello, everyone. This is the Friday live stream. This is the Theodore Schubot YouTube channel, and we are doing yet again another Friday afternoon into the evening live stream. This is the second one that I've done in a row. There have been some delays with my live streams within recent months, and that is because I have been occupied with work. But this Friday, today, is a free day for me, so we are doing the live stream. We're going to be having some fun. We're going to be talking about gardening. We're going to be talking about some of the interesting things that I found in this book and how it connects with some of the propaganda that's come out of NATO in regards to Ukraine. I'm sure there will be people who will disagree with this, but oh well. And we're going to be talking about alcohol and music. Like always, this is not just a political YouTube channel. This is a YouTube channel that is existential. So we are dealing with all of the vicissitudes, all of the many faces, all of the many shades and hues of human existence. Politics, alcohol, food, gardening, despair, tragedy, you name it, we do it on this channel. This is not about politics completely. This is about experience. This is an existential YouTube channel. And at some times we're doing good, and at times we are in an existential crisis, because that's just how life is. Hello, Joshua George. Hello, JP. Hello, Veliko Simic. Man, when the J is the first letter in the name, it's easy because I know it's just a ya, but when it's in the middle, I'm a little bit confused. Veliko Simic. I'm guessing that's what it is. Goose Hunter, hello. Hello, Kofteo. You are drinking and watching MMA, UFC, or some other platform. Hope you enjoy watching the fight. Mustache is good. Yeah, I put a little bit of coconut oil on my face. So, what are you drinking tonight? We're going to be doing something a little bit different today when it comes to drinking alcohol. You will see. It's going to be interesting. Hello, Kate Estrada Paz, Goose Hunter, UPA, Upad Line. All on one channel, that's right. It's a multi-dimensional channel. That is correct. It is a multi-dimensional channel. And I've had some people tell me, maybe you should do a different channel, a separate channel. I like to put everything in one channel. That way we don't complicate anything. And pretty much, this way of doing things, one video I'm talking about why life is tragedy. One video I'm talking about why life is depressing. One video I'm talking about Sudan. It's the way I like to do things, because this YouTube channel, I think every YouTube channel that has been existing for years contains lore and it contains character arcs, because as you grow as a human being, your view of the world is going to change gradually, and how you feel, how you develop psychologically as a human being, how you develop emotionally, spiritually, all these things, it's going to be reflected in your videos. And so people who follow you consistently are going to notice the changes in your character. And I think that people who put comments on YouTube channels consistently, people who follow a channel consistently, I think they're also a part of the story of a YouTube channel. The sad thing about YouTube channels is that a lot of times they get canceled, they get completely deleted by YouTube for the person running the channel breaking the rules enough times, and they disappear and they die. And then you restart again, and then it's like the story has to restart, like a video game restarting. I'm trying not to get this channel deleted. So that's why I have a Rumble account. That's why I have a BitChute account. So in case I do want to talk about something that is a little too controversial for YouTube, I will do it on Rumble and BitChute. And the reason for this is because I want to see how long this channel can go. This is my 4th YouTube channel, and I really want to see how far this channel can go. Like, how much of a lore can we create? How many different layers of a YouTube channel's story can we form in a number of years? And I really want to push this thing. For sociological reasons, psychological reasons, existential reasons, I want to see how far I can take this thing. And I want to observe myself. And I want to, use this channel for introspection and see the character arc. Because I'll watch videos. When I first started seriously YouTubing, there were people who would save my videos. And those videos that are saved from 2013, 2012 maybe, those videos are still on YouTube, and you can watch them, and you can see me from 2012, and it's like, wow. You can see that there was definitely a difference in character, and that's natural for every human being. It's natural for every human being to develop. You develop, and you want to develop. That's a good thing. You want to develop, because if you don't develop, you never really grow. And there are people who never grow, and it's a sad, sad case. You see people who never grow. They're stuck in their ways, and they never change, and people around them run away from them because they never see any sort of improvement in them. So, yeah, ShoeBotTube. Yeah, I actually years ago I attempted to make my own YouTube. I called it ShoeBotTube. It was crazy. It lasted for a number of years. At first, we allowed for anyone to come on and start their own channel, and it was okay in the beginning. In a matter of weeks, we had people coming on to ShoeBotTube and posting the most horrendous, horrific things you can imagine. Very grotesque things. I don't even want to describe them. And so we realized, okay, we need to make this website exclusive to me, people in the ShoeBot team, and some friends who want a channel, and that's it. And we made it completely exclusive. And we got rid of all inclusivity. And that lasted for a number of years. And then that went down to its death, and it's kind of a long story, why and how that happened. And one day I'll sit down and tell you guys the story of, how everything how a lot of things in the ShoeBot little media world went down. It's a very long and dramatic story. I think one day I'll explain it to you guys. Let's talk more about music, then about depression factor. Well, here's the thing. So I did 2 videos that were very existential, that were very not morbid, but they were. They had some. They were melancholic. Let's just use that word. They were melancholic, and I think that I like to express myself in my videos, and I like to express how I feel in a video. I don't like to be mechanical and dry and emotionalist. I don't believe in that. I don't like the idea of just, okay, let's turn on the camera and let's talk about what's happening in Africa, or let's talk about what's happening in Ukraine, let's talk about what's happening in Serbia or wherever, Mexico, or somewhere in the United States, and let's just spit out facts and turn off the camera and that's it. I like to express myself because my interest in politics and my interest in society and my interest in justice is rooted in my psychology. It's rooted in my soul. And I cannot separate my soul from the interest that I have in the things of this physical world. So if I'm very interested in justice against the most egregious of criminals, and I don't like it when society sympathizes and wants to be lenient on the worst of criminals, people who rape and murder and cannibalize and do all sorts of horrific things, that is rooted in my emotions. I am angry at evil. I am angry at injustice, and I want to show that. I want to show that because I can't help it. I cannot help the fact that I am angry at injustice. And I'm angry at the fact that this world is so dark and it is so riddled with evil. And to sit here and pretend that everything is just going great is insincere. And it's not real. There is a certain mentality that is within the Christian world that comes out and says, let's not talk about anything sad. Let's just worship the Lord and just let's not express any sadness at all. And that is not realistic, and it's not practical. It's sort of rooted in living in a shell, living in a bubble, and pretending that the world is just not pretending that the world is perfect, but ignoring the fact that the world is filled with tragedy. And there's a beautiful story in the gospel where Jesus, these women go to Jesus and these people go to Jesus and they say, help our friend Lazarus. Lazarus is dying. And Jesus doesn't get there on time. And he is told Lazarus is dead. And the gospel tells us that Jesus was moved to sadness. He was moved to tears, and Jesus wept because Lazarus died. And then Jesus resurrects Lazarus. Not resurrects, but he brings Lazarus back to life. Lazarus, by the way, is a very popular name in the Balkans. It's very interesting. So many Serbian people are named Lazar. It's very interesting. But Lazarus is brought back from the dead. He's brought back from the grave. And there's two different meanings there's two different things that are happening here that reflect human life. There's the reality of the tragedy of life, which Jesus acknowledges by his tears. He acknowledges the tragedy of life by his tears. And he doesn't ignore it. He doesn't say, oh, well, I'm going to bring back Lazarus. I'm going to bring Lazarus back from the dead anyway, so I'm not sad. I'm happy. Why are we sad, guys? Why? I'm going to bring him back from the tomb. I'm not going to be sad. He doesn't do that. He is moved to sadness. Why? Because Jesus acknowledges the tragedy of life. But then at the same time, he knows he's going to bring Lazarus back from the dead, and he does. He brings Lazarus back from the dead. And so there is this duality in life in the sense that you have the tragedy, but then you have the reality of hope. You have the reality of resurrection. And so this is why I say in my videos on the tragedy of life that life is bittersweet. It's not utterly drenched in despair, although there is a lot of despair. But life is bittersweet in the sense that there is tragedy, but at the same time, hope springs. Hope rises up and manifests itself. And hope rises up within ourselves and gives us this spark of life. And so there is bittersweetness in life. I say life is bittersweet. And you can see this reflected in artwork. If you look at European artwork from the Baroque era, or if you look at ancient Byzantine artwork, you can see in the very textures of the art, in the shades and the hues of the artwork, you can see sadness and hope. Like there's an old a piece of artwork from the medieval period that shows Jesus confronting Satan in the desert, and you can see the misery in the artwork, in the color and in the visuals. It's Jesus is in the middle of this dry, dismal desert, and he's confronting the devil. But at the same time, in the style of the artwork, there is hope. You can just sense it. You can see it. You can feel it in the artwork. There is Jesus confronting evil in the midst of this very dark and gloomy setting. It's very dark and gloomy place. So there is the tragedy and sadness of life, but at the same time, there is victory and hope. And life is very sad. Like I don't care what anyone tells me. Life is tragic. I mean, life is tragic. Like you grow up, you live with your parents, you become attached to your family, then your family dies. And you have to live with that. And you have to live with the fact that your loved ones are going to die. And that is it's quite gloomy. It's quite gloomy. You can see this reflected in certain aspects of cuisines. For example, there is this one aspect in cuisine, in cooking, that you can see not just in one country, but you can see it in Italy. You can see it in, I think you can see it in Japan as well. Observing life and having that observation reflect in food. So seeing the reality of life in cooking. It's not just cooking for the sake of eating so that we can survive, but it's also cooking in the sense that you're doing certain things that reflect the reality of life. And I think that human beings obviously have been cooking for survival since forever. You know, we still are doing it. But regardless of the fact that cooking is done for survival, human beings have found ways to see the reality of life in food. So just to give you guys some examples, in Italian cooking culture, there is the emphasis on bitterness in cooking. So things like dandelion green, things like the cruciferous vegetables, kale, broccoli rabe, rapini, cime di rapa, many different greens that are bitter. I would say most greens are bitter. Things like endive, things like certain lettuces can be very bitter. And these things are predominant in Italian cooking. They're very commonly used in Italian cuisine. And so in Italian cuisine, you will see something that is very savory served with something that's very bitter. And there is a philosophy that is expressed in Italian culinary culture, and that is that, yes, you have the savoriness of life, you have the zest of life, something that that tastes really good, and this reflects the joy of life. But then at the same time, that is balanced out with bitterness, the bitter herbs, bitter greens, and this reflects the bitterness of life, the despair of life, the gloominess of life. And so they conjoin these things together on the plate. And so as you're eating, you can be reminded, wow, not all of life is going to be good. There's going to be bitterness, but at the same time, not all of life is going to be sad. There's going to be zest. There's going to be savoriness. There's going to be sweetness. And so you find this. You find this observation on the tragedy of life, on the pain of life in cooking, the bittersweetness of life in cooking and food. And I find that stuff so fascinating. I don't read politics for the sake of reading politics, just like I don't read history for the sake of reading history. I look at these things as mere shades of existence, as mere shades of life, as mere shades of man's journey to either God or the devil. You know, we're all on a journey, and we're either going to God or we're going to the devil, right? There are no other paths. And in history, in politics, you see these pathways. Some people are going to God. A lot of people are going to the devil. And so many people have chosen the path of evil. So many people have. So when I do these live streams and I'm talking about, existentialism, or I'm talking about music, all these things are intertwined with my interest in geopolitics or my interest in history. I don't get into geopolitics for the sake of getting into geopolitics. I see geopolitics as merely a means to explain the tragedy of human life. Why is Turkey interested in getting Sudan? Because Turkey wants to have access to Saudi Arabia. Why are the Arabs so terrified of that? Because the Arabs don't want to be slaughtered by the Turks. It's all tragedy. It's all tragedy that's masked with geopolitical, analytical terms and academic language. So, anyway, let's see here. Yeah. Did you know that government that U.S. government, the conscription age of World War III for man and woman for 60 years? I did not know this. No. Could you give me a link for this? Angry at injustice, unless it's injustice against Albanians, Bosniaks, Ukrainians, Croats, and other peoples you find desirable. Oh man. Again with the crazy ass accusations. Amazing accusations. Yeah, let's talk about the fact that the KLA butchered Albanians. Let's talk about the fact that thousands of Albanians literally fled Kosovo because they were fleeing the KLA. And where did they go? They went to Serbia. So I guess the suffering of Albanians only matters if Serbs are causing the suffering. LOL, I was confused when I first was reading it. Reading what? This is from Remy Kisias. What do you mean? What were you reading, Remy? I'm sorry. Hope springs eternal. That's right. Beautiful, beautiful. And you have a dream of eternal life after life. Okay. Do you think Iran will take over Turkey? No, I don't. I don't think Iran will take over Turkey. I think if anyone, if there was a war between Turkey and Iran, Turkey will win. There's no doubt in my mind. Turkey has a much more advanced military, much more innovative military industry. I think Turkey is much more wealthy than Iran. Iran is definitely a seriously rising power in the Middle East, seriously rising regional power. But I think that Turkey definitely has the edge because of the fact that it's so well armed and it has pretty serious NATO technology. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Cooking alive spices in Asia is a primal rule of food freshness. Goose Hunter says cooking a live species in Asia is a primal rule of food freshness. Are you talking about cooking animals alive, Goose Hunter? I'm not sure. And which part of Asia are you in? Hello, Brainstorm 4207. We are going to heaven or Sheol. Christopher Kerpluk says, what are your thoughts on RFK Jr. running for president? He seems to be anti-oligarchy. I really don't know, to be honest with you. I didn't even know this guy. I don't even know who you're talking about. Robert, is it Robert, whatever, Kennedy? Let's see, who's this? Robert Kennedy. Not participating in far-right event after being listed as a speaker. That's weird. I have no idea. I need to research this guy. No idea anything about him, to be honest with you. I don't really, again, if I study politics, it's only because for some reason spiritually I'm interested in the subject. You know, that's it. I don't really get into reading about politics or reading about politicians because I think the politician is a savior or something like that. Like, for example, the last politician that I seriously read about was Najib Bukele. Is it Najib Bukele? How am I even? Bukele. Najib. They say Naib, but it's actually Najib. Najib Bukele was the last politician that I seriously read about, and the only reason why was because of the fact that he was able to make El Salvador go from being the most violent country in the world to being a hell of a lot safer than what it was before. El Salvador had the highest murder rate in the world for years. I remember years ago reading articles about El Salvador and reading about how El Salvador and really the rest of Central America had become the murderous crime scene of the world because of its ridiculously high murder rate. And Mr. Bukele has finally made the streets safe to walk. Mr. Bukele has finally made areas where people couldn't even go to safe enough for people to go to and for people to sell things and for people to maintain businesses and to operate businesses. That was not in the realm of possibility for El Salvador before Bukele implemented his policy. And that really goes to show that tough policing works. You know, I'm so sick and tired of the sophistry and the gaslighting that people do in America. They'll say, well, tough policing doesn't work. Look, there's a lot of tough cops in Chicago and they have tough policing. Well, how many times do you hear about criminals who have done crimes while on parole? Why are they on parole? If criminals are behind bars, they can't commit crimes on the street. If criminals are dead, they definitely can't commit crimes anywhere. Not in prison, not on the street. It really is that simple. I mean, being tough on criminals is what works. That's what works. That's it. It's not complicated. But people like to complicate things because they want to confuse people. That's the bottom line. Because Iran has located itself on the map of Psalm 83 war locations. Psalm 83 war locations. Okay, maybe I don't know. Which locations are you speaking of? Have you ever tried archery or Japanese art of Kyoto? I have fired a bow and arrow a number of times in my life. I have a bow and arrow. It's a compound bow. I have fired it a number of times. I'm not very good at it, but I have hit. I had a little target that was a plastic deer, and I hit that thing so many times. I had a lot of fun with it. Hit it in the eye, hit it in the middle of the body. It was, yeah, a lot of fun. But I've never studied any Japanese archery or anything like that. No, I never trained in archery. I just did some bow and arrow target practice for fun years ago, and I haven't done it in over a decade, so that was a long time ago. Would El Salvador sending advisors to Haiti help out with the gang problems? I mean, yeah, Haiti has a very has a big problem with crime. It's one of the most crime-infested countries in the world, and I don't see why it would not help if Haiti got advice and training and teaching and counseling on how to deal with criminals. What do you think? Why is it so hard to destroy Boko Haram in Nigeria? Because of corruption, because you have people in the government in Nigeria who sympathize with Boko Haram. And that's pretty much the reason why. There's a lot of interplay. There's a lot of conspiring, I think, between the government and Boko Haram. Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well. I hope you are all well. I hope you are well as well. Look at Iran's proxy army locations. It's surrounding Israel. Okay, we'll see what happens. I think eventually Israel is going to be destroyed. Not completely, but I think Israel eventually is going to be attacked and invaded, and it's going to be completely devastated. Not saying everyone's going to die, but a lot of people are going to die. And I think eventually Turkey and probably Iran will hit Israel. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if some European countries, other than Turkey, because Turkey technically is part of Europe, but Western European countries will attack Israel. I would not be surprised if Germany decides one day to finish off from where they left off back in the 1940s, and they hit Israel. Germany is a very strong ally with Iran, and the fact that Iran wants to destroy Israel doesn't really bother the Germans, and has never seriously bothered the Germans in the decades since the Second World War, in which they have been working with the Iranians. So, time will tell everything. Time will tell. Wouldn't Turkey side with Israel? Possibly. Possibly, but I think in the future it's unlikely because there is a lot of hatred towards Israel and Turkey. A lot. Let's not forget, Mein Kampf was at one point in time the #1 bestseller in Turkey. And I think that a lot of people bash Erdogan. Erdogan is bad. Don't get me wrong. Erdogan is bad. He's bad news. He's an Islamist. He did some terrible things to the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, working with the Azeris. He is expansionist. Erdogan is not good. But I think that there are people in Turkey who are worse than Erdogan. I think that if you look at the Grey Wolves, if you look at the hardcore Turkish nationalists, I think they are very vicious and very violent and murderous. And those people worry me. Those people getting serious political power worry me more so than an Erdogan taking power. Because I think at the same time Erdogan is workable. He's working with the Russians. He has been, or at least his government has been in talks with Syria. But at the same time, it all could just be subterfuge and deception, which it probably is. But I think that there are people nonetheless who are worse than Erdogan, who are much more murderous and genocidal. Hi, so happy to be here. Hope you are not going soon. No, we just started. How long have I been streaming? A half hour. And in another half hour, we're going to be talking about alcohol. So we're good to go. Have you been to Malula, Syria, the village from where the language of Jesus Christ originated? I've never been to Syria. I've only been to the Middle East one time. and I was an infant, so I don't remember anything. But technically, I have been to the Middle East because my passport says I've been to the Middle East. So technically, I've been there. But I've never been to Syria, never been to Lebanon, never. I've never been. I've been to Israel, but again, I was an infant, so I don't remember anything. I've never consciously been in Israel. Let's just put it that way. Technically, physically, I've been there. I've never really been to the Middle East in a conscious level. I have difficulty saying that word. In a conscious level. Okay, I have no interest in going to the Middle East. Why would I go there? No interest at all. I think America is anxiety ridden enough. Why in the world would I want to go to a region of the world where there is even more anxiety? In America, we're hearing about shootings every week and people getting killed just going grocery shopping, just going to the theater, just going to the mall. I don't want to go to a place where a bomb can go off in a market. Jesus spoke Hebrew. Oh, here we go. Let's talk about Hebrew versus Aramaic. Let's do this, guys. Let's do it. Why not? Take over the whole chat. Let's talk about this. Hebrew versus Aramaic, guys. This is what the world depends on right now. The world's going to be a better place if more and more people know that Hebrew was spoken in Judea over 2,000 years ago. Let's do this, all right? Very important. What do you think of Title 42 ending? I have no idea, guys. I really don't know. I'm not that educated about this. I don't even know what is Title 42? Let's read it together. I don't know. Let's read it together. Title 42. What is this? What is Title 42? AP News came out today. Let's look at a website here, guys. Let's look at a website. Wait. Let's do window capture. Title 40. What the hell? Title 42. Here we go. Oh my god, this is so annoying. All right, here we go, guys. Wait, so annoying. I'm such a boomer, guys. Here we go. U.S. is putting new restrictions into place at its southern border to try to stop migrants from crossing illegally and encourage them instead to apply for asylum online through a new process. The changes come with the end of coronavirus restrictions on asylum that have allowed the U.S. to quickly turn back migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border for the past 3 years. Those restrictions are known as Title 42 because the authority comes from Title 42 of a 1944 public health law allowing curbs on migration in the name of protecting health. Oh, okay, so this goes back to the Trump era. We had COVID. We had to block the border, understandably so. Now the restriction is ending. Disinformation has swirled and confusion has set in during the transition. A look at the new rules and the old ones. So Title 42 is the name of an emergency health authority. It was a holdover from President Donald Trump's administration and began in March 2020. The authority allowed U.S. officials to turn away migrants who came to the U.S.-Mexico border on the grounds of preventing the spread of COVID-19. Before that, migrants could cross illegally, ask for asylum, and be allowed into the U.S. They were then screened and often released to wait out their immigration cases. Under Title 42, migrants were returned over the border and denied the right to seek asylum. U.S. officials turned away migrants more than 2.8 million times. Families and children traveling alone were exempt. Oh, okay. But there were no real consequences when someone illegally crossed the border. So migrants were able to try again and again to cross on the off chance they would get into the U.S. My reading comprehension, good grief, it's dreadful. But there was no real consequence. Okay. President Joe Biden initially kept Title 42 in place after he took office, then tried to end its use in 2022. Republicans sued, arguing the restrictions were necessary for border security, etc., etc. I don't know. I think we have these debates every single year about migration. I don't really see anything new with this. Every every year we talk about migration. Every few years we have a particularly intense discussion about migration because there's a huge wave of migrants coming to America. This has happened so many times in America, and this has been a topic of contention and acrimonious discussions in the United States for many decades. I don't really get into these sorts of topics too much because, again, it's just a broken record. It's like we've been hearing about this for so many decades, and yeah. But my only problem with the migration thing is making sure that like MS-13 lunatics don't come here. Like, let's make sure that doesn't happen. But that's the problem. Those people slip in. But the way I look at it is, if we're getting a wave of migrants, if we're getting migrants from, I don't know, Mexico, Guatemala, I mean, it's just a new, fresh wave of workers for America's labor. It's pretty much what it is. And big companies like it because it's cheap labor. Small businesses like it because it's also cheap labor. And that's just the way it works. That's it. I've been around construction sites for years. I've worked in building sites and things like that, and every time you see workers there, it's almost always Hispanics, and many times they don't really speak good English. And you know what? They work their asses off. I've seen these Hispanic guys, they don't speak English, and they work their asses off from 5 a.m., 6 in the morning, all the way into the late afternoon, into the evening time. And they don't complain. They get their money, they go buy their beer, and that's it. And that's it. It's just the reality of life. I don't know if you want to talk about how this is going to destroy America or whatever. I guess you can, knock yourself out. But you have bad apples, of course. You have a lot of bad apples here. You have bad apples everywhere, and we should keep those people out, ideally speaking. But at the same time, we get some very, very good laborers from that region of the world. And yeah, it's like, you go to Russia, and who are they getting to do the heavy labor? They're getting Central Asians, Kazakhs, and Uzbeks. Yeah, I mean, it's just how a lot of countries operate. It's how a lot of countries operate. And this has been going on since time immemorial, guys. It's been going on since forever. So it is what it is. Only as an infant. Okay, please explain why there is always mismanagement and ungovernable conditions only in the Middle East countries. Only in the Middle East countries? Have you seen India? It's far worse. Pakistan is far worse than the Middle East. The Middle East actually functioned very well when it was under hard rulers, Saddam, Gaddafi. The Middle East ran well before the civil war in Syria when it was under Bashar al-Assad. I mean, Bashar al-Assad ruled Syria for 10 years without a civil war. Then there was a civil war that lasted for 10 years. How come things were well before the breakout of the civil war? Saddam Hussein, Iraq was very safe, actually, extremely safe. More safe probably than the United States. Not probably. Iraq was more safe than the United States when it was under Saddam Hussein. So I don't know. I think when you have NATO coming in and you have a more militarily advanced empire, going into the Middle East and destabilizing things, I mean, obviously you're going to have a lot of problems. Yeah. So I don't think it's only the Middle East countries. Let's see here. Anil John, pagan beliefs. But I think the biggest problem, the root problem with the Middle East, obviously, is Islam. That is the root problem of it all. And as long as Islam is going to be in the Middle East, you're going to have Islamists who outside powers can use to wreak chaos and destruction. Have you watched the Kerala story? It's a short film based on the non-Muslim girls, converted Muslims for fighting in Syria. The film is being pushed to be banned in India. Your thought? I have no idea. Let's see here. What do you think the outcomes of the 2023 Greek elections will be, and how do you think the outcomes will affect Turkey? Okay. Hold on a second, guys. The Greek elections. It's amazing. I search the news every day, and I don't even see stuff about this. Weber's Greek connection cast shadow ahead of elections. I don't know. I think whoever wins in Greece is definitely going to have an effect on the relationship between, or not relationship, but the tension between Greece and Turkey. I mean, no matter who wins in Turkey, no matter who wins in Greece, you're going to have tensions between those two countries. Doesn't matter if Erdogan wins, or doesn't matter if somebody from the Turkish Republicans win. Greece and Turkey are going to have tensions. Why? Because that's part of policy. It's part of policy. Turkey wants to control the Aegean Sea. Turkey has territorial claims on islands on the Aegean that belong to Greece. Greece says those islands belong to us. Greece wants to put military on the islands. They want to put their navy around the islands. Turkey says, don't do that, Greece. Don't do that. Hoo, hoo, ha, hoo, ha, hoo. Doesn't matter who the hell is going to win. That's part of policy. This is like saying, hey, we're going to have an election in America. Do you think that America is going to become friendlier with China? No. It doesn't matter if we get a Democrat. It doesn't matter if we get a Republican. America is going to have tensions with China. America has more tensions, and I would argue that America has more tensions and is more worried about China than it is Russia. Because China has a way bigger economy than the Russian economy. China technologically, supposedly, has a lot more going for it than Russia does. But I think what worries people the most is China's economy. I mean, the Chinese economy is huge. They're making $18 trillion in their GDP every year. They're making trillions in their GDP every year. Whereas the GDP of Russia is over $1 trillion. So the GDP of Russia, what's the GDP of Russia? I think it's what, 2 trillion, 1 trillion GDP Russia. Yeah, so it's almost 2 trillion. So the GDP of Russia is comparable to the GDP of the state of Texas. But America is, and you could have a president who, may not be openly friendly with Russia, but you could have a president who will be more relaxed with Russia. Like you could have a Trump who comes in and he's indifferent to the war in Ukraine. He's not going to care as much as a Democrat or a neocon would. You could have that. But the idea of having a U.S. government that is super friendly with China in a situation where America doesn't have to be friendly with China, you're not going to have a China-friendly government unless there is some kind of an existential crisis where America has to ally with China, kind of like America arming with the allying with the Soviet Union, or America working with the Chinese to fight the Japanese. If you're not in a situation like that, a serious situation like that, forget about it. So it doesn't matter. Turkey and Greece are going to be enemies. They've been enemies since God. Listen. Greece and Turkey have been enemies for thousands of years, okay? Even before Islam. You had the Trojan War. What was that about? What was the Trojan War about? Was Troy Greek? Was it? I don't think it was. I've heard that the Trojans spoke some kind of an Indo-European language. I mean, they were Indo-Europeans like the Greeks, but I don't think they were exactly Hellenes or Greeks. But there was a war between the Greeks and the Trojans. I can't pronounce this correctly. Achaeans or Achaeans or whatever, who were living in mainland Greece. Their king Agamemnon, and then they had a war with the Trojans, and it was a brutal, vicious war. I mean, that was like proto-Greek Anatolian tension, or Greek Anatolian conflict, right there. I mean, before Islam. And even you had other you had other Anatolian rulers. Man, I have a stammer today that is ridiculous. I need a little bit of ouzo to soften myself up a little bit. But you had, for example, Mithridates. Mithridates was an Anatolian leader who had a war with the Romans, and he was living in modern-day Turkey. And there was a war between the Romans and Mithridates. And Mithridates was this vicious, murderous ruler, part Greek, part Persian, kind of like people in Turkey today. People in Turkey today are mixed between Greek and Persian and Arab. And there was a war between the Romans and Mithridates, a war between the Romans and Anatolians. So there's a very, very long history here, very long history. And then things really blew up when Anatolia became Muslim. That's when things really blew up. And the Anatolians mixed with Arab, mixed with Persian, had imperialistic designs, and they tried to take over Europe, and they took over the Middle East, and they took over parts of Africa. And that, to me, it was a continuation of this tension between the Asiatics and the Westerners, the Asiatics and the Westerners. And by Westerners, I mean Greeks and Italians, or the war between Byzantium and the Turks. It was a Greek Asiatic conflict. But the thing is that Turks are today pretty much just Islamized Greeks. They're Islamized Indo-Europeans for the most part. Real Turks are Uzbeks and Kazakhs. Real Turks are not people in Anatolia. Real Turks are Uzbeks and Kazakhs. They look like Mongolians. And what happened was you had the Turks coming in from Central Asia. They came from Turkmenistan. They went over to Persia. They took over Persia, and then eventually they hit Anatolia, and they fought the Greeks in Anatolia. And it was a long centuries-long conflict. It went on for centuries. Eventually, the Turks just kept taking territory, expanding territory, and they mixed in with the population. They forced the people into Islam, and those people who were conquered by the Turks would become Turkified, and they would say, "Oh, those are Turks now." And so they got Turkification of Europeans. That's what it was. And the last stand of Anatolia was Constantinople. That was the last final stand. That was the last guard. It was the last, I guess you could say it was the last and final defense, against the complete Turkification of Anatolia. And they lost. They lost Constantinople, and that was it. And more Greeks became Muslim, and there's a very small minority of Greeks in Turkey who identify themselves as Greek and Christian, but they're an extremely small minority. There's maybe a few thousand of them. But I think that that was merely a continuation of two different things. I think it was a continuation of the wave of Mongol hordes. You had the Mongolian hordes, you had the Huns, and then eventually you had the Turks. And the Turks really were the ones who got more of a foothold into Europe than anyone else. I mean, they took over Anatolia. And then I think it was part of it was this continuation of conflict between the Greco-Roman world and the Anatolians. It's just my observation. I could be completely wrong. Who knows? Here we go, guys. Troy was in Turkey. It's Turkey. If you look at historically, it's Troy was Turkey. Let's see here. Neka bude borba neprestana. I don't even know what this means. What does this mean? Let the fight be unceasing. Okay. What do you think of Jack Teixeira leaking documents? I have no clue, dude. Basically, America said we don't think Ukraine is winning, and that got leaked out, and it pissed a bunch of people off. I don't really see what the big deal. It was very obvious that Ukraine wasn't winning, and it's very obvious that Ukraine is not winning this war. Look up 1991 rebellion in Iraq. Looks like something that happens in a stable country. LOL. Okay, let's look it up. 1991 Iraq uprising. Iraqi uprisings were ethnic and religious uprisings. Okay. So it was an uprising that Saddam Hussein squashed. Okay. Again, as I said, the Middle East is more stable when it's under very strong leaders. So you have this one example that you brought up, Iraqi uprisings of 1991, which was led by Shiite and Kurds, obviously. Yes, Saddam Hussein had to deal with the Shiite and the Kurds because the Shiites were the majority. Saddam Hussein represented a minority. And obviously, you're going to have religious tension. As I said, the root of all the problems in the Middle East is the Islamic religion and the religious tensions. You brought up this one example, but I can bring up the fact that most Christians ran away from Iraq after Saddam Hussein was toppled. So if the Middle East was so bad before, then why didn't the Christians run away? You had over 1 million Christians living under Saddam Hussein, and Saddam Hussein protected the Christian population. But after Saddam Hussein is removed, most of the Christians literally ran away from the Middle East. So if the Middle East was that bad, then why didn't they run away? It's very obvious that the Middle East got horrendously unstable with the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. Very obvious. It does better under those leaders. You're going to have religious tensions because of the Islamic polarization, obviously. The Islamic sectarianism. Obviously, you're going to have these problems. But look at what happened when they removed him. And Saddam Hussein had to do what he had to do to remain in power. And that was taking out the Shiites and taking out the Kurds. So yes. Trump must win. Honestly, I pray for America. We need you. Let's see. You say Akkadians and Agamemnon wrong. You're always had pronunciation. Akkadians. Are they Akkadians? What do you say? I've always said it's Akkad. Akkad. It sounds more Semitic. Agamemnon. Agamemnon. What group are the Kurds? They are Indo-Iranians. Basically a type of Persian people. Do you know what the Hafs version of the Quran? Nope. That empire ruled 1,000 years, right? I heard. How long did Ottoman rule? Ottoman Empire ruled for a long time. $600 Ottoman Empire ran. Enjoy a glass of Retsina. Enjoy it, John. It's very good stuff. Have you watched Thomas Alexander research on the Syro-Aramaic version of the Quran? No, I have not. Ottomans ruled Byzantine lands for like 450 years. They still control Anatolia. The Turks, it's all Turkish. It's not Greek anymore. It's not Hellenized anymore. It's not Byzantium anymore. How long have I been streaming? Oh, damn, guys. So let's talk about a specific plant that I find very interesting. So let's talk about this plant here. Theo, this is America, and you are American, so say it the American way, even if it's not correct. Yeah. Sure. I guess you want me to say oregano as opposed to oregano. I prefer to say it oregano. Sounds better. Okay. So this is I guess you could call it like a tincture or whatever. This is borage water. And I made this today. I found this recipe for borage water. I want to show you guys the color of this. So borage, let's talk about borage first. Borage is a plant. It's kind of like an herb. And it tastes like cucumber. And very interesting. It's in the same family as comfrey is. It has a very long taproot. And it grows these thick stems and these sort of rough leaves, rough fuzzy leaves. And then eventually it pops out with this huge number of blue and pink flowers. and the leaves taste like cucumber. The flowers have a very slight sweet taste that explodes in your mouth when you first chew on it, and then it becomes very floral and cucumbery. The leaves and the stems are very cucumbery. They taste like a mix between cucumber and a watermelon rind. That's what borage tastes like. It's a very beautiful plant. The nice thing about borage is that you never really have to sow its seed ever again to get it the next season. So when borage pops out with its flowers, it eventually will produce seeds, and those seeds are pretty nice sized. And those seeds will fall to the ground, and next year you'll have more borage. And that's what happens. So once you grow borage, you never run out at all. You never run out of borage. So today I made borage water, because I got so much of it growing outside. And it has a refreshing cucumbery watermelon flavor. So let's look at this color here, guys. Check this out. Oh shit, it's about to spill. Look at this picture, guys. This is like something out of 2003. Look at that. It's like something out of... This is like something that your mom put lemonade in when you were growing up back in the 90s. Look at that color. Nice color. I gotta hold this thing down. It's so old. So old and it's breaking down. This stuff looks like Gatorade. So what I did is I just got a bunch of borage leaves and flowers and stems, put them in a blender, water, a little bit over a teaspoon of honey, and maybe like a quarter of a cup of lemon juice, and blended it all together for like 2 minutes in a blender. I got one of those Vitamix things, and then after that, I put a sift, a really thin colander, over the pitcher, and I just poured it through the sift, and went through the sift into the pitcher, and I got rid of most of the plant sediment so it doesn't look like a swamp, and it comes out like this. So this is borage water mixed with, and has that wonderful cucumber smell. This is borage water mixed with a little bit of honey, lemon, and that's it. So let's give it a taste. Oh yeah, it tastes really good. I've been drinking this throughout the day. It has a very good flavor. In Italian, they call it boragine. In Spanish, they call it borraja. In Espanol, in España, they call it borraja. And in English, they call it borage. So it's like tasting cucumber water. In Russia, I don't remember the exact name that they use to label this plant, but I was looking at what Russian people say about borage, and of course I used Google Translate. What I found out was that they literally call borage cucumber grass because it's a plant that tastes like cucumber and watermelon rind. So that green watermelon rind taste mixed with cucumber, that's what it tastes like. In Russia, they had this recipe where they take borage leaves and they mix it with cucumber, and then they drench the whole thing in mayonnaise. It looks nasty. This is actually the best way that I have found to use borage, is to just make it into a drink. This is my favorite way to use borage. Cooked borage is kind of nasty. The stems are okay cooked, but the leaves, when you cook them, they become somewhat slimy, and it's nasty. And they lose a lot of that cucumbery flavor when you cook it. So I prefer just to make it into a drink. The Italians do this thing with it where they make a pasta called panzotti, And panzotti literally means the belly of the pig, the pot belly of the pig. And because the ravioli, the pasta that they make called panzotti, looks like a pig's belly. Whatever. And what they do is they take the borage leaves and then they cut them up real fine and they mix it with ricotta cheese, or they, maybe they mix it with Parmigiano, but traditionally you would mix it with ricotta. And then they'll add other leaves to it, maybe kale, maybe dandelion. It's basically whatever leaves that you can forage, and they mix it with the ricotta. I think they throw in an egg. They make this mix, and then they use it as a filling for the panzotti pasta. It's like a ravioli, and they boil it, and then they eat it, whatever. Supposedly, borage is good for, I want to say your kidneys. Say it's good for your kidneys. It has a very good smell. It has that watermelon rind smell, kind of cucumbery smell. It tastes like summer. It's like summer in a glass. This is a good alternative to lemonade. So instead of making lemonade, make borage. It has lemon juice in it anyway, so it does have a citrusy flavor. But the real backbone of the drink is the borage. The lemon uplifts it and gives it just a little more depth of flavor. And that little taste of honey just adds a sweet balance. The ancient Romans, from what I know, would take borage leaves and just put them in wine and then let it sit and allow the borage to not just flavor the wine, but to mix or to infuse into the wine its intoxicating properties, if you will. So the thing about borage is that it does have somewhat of an intoxicating property or an intoxicating character. If you drink enough of this, you will get high. It makes you high. So just to let you guys know how much you would have to drink, I put in this concoction maybe 150, 200 grams of borage leaf and stem. This whole thing was filled up to here. I drank all the way down here. Oh, I drank some more, so about over here. This is how much I drank. So from here to around here. From here to around here. I got up from the seat, and I did not expect this to happen. I just thought it would be a nice drink to have. I got up from my chair, and I felt like I just smoked a whole bunch of really strong pure tobacco. That's what it feels like. And I thought, I feel drunk, and I haven't had any alcohol, so what the hell's going on? Then it dawned on me, my memory got triggered, and I remember what I read about the use of borage in the Greco-Roman world. Romans would take, I think it was either Greeks or Romans, I want to say Romans would take the borage leaves and just soak them in wine and allow the borage to infuse into the wine its intoxicating properties. And then they would drink the wine, and they would get the borage would amplify the intoxicating effect of the wine. So they would actually get more drunk because the borage leaves had infused into the wine its sedative properties. Let's just put it that way. So it is a sedative. I remember reading this months ago, but I forgot, and I kind of thought that it was bullshit, to be honest with you. But after drinking almost an entire pitcher of borage water, I can confirm 100% that it's true. So not only does it taste good, if you drink enough of it, it'll make you high. This stuff will get you high. Let's see. Have any of y'all ever looked up who you share a birthday with? I drink almost every day fermented beet juice with garlic, Baileys, and a bit of salt. Oh yeah, and what difference do you see that making in your health, in your physical being. What cocktail do you think you can make with borage? I know that borage is heavily used in tinctures and liqueurs. They will mix borage flower syrup with alcohol and drink it. People do that because it does add a nice flavor. Michael the Ninth Paliologos was born on the same day as me. Awesome. Speaking of Paliologos, we're going to go back to Greece today, okay? Borage is said to be good for respiratory illness. Yeah, I've heard that it's good for, I think, gout or arthritis. It's good for depression. And I heard that it's good for your kidneys. That's what I've heard. Borage is good for blood purification. I've heard this as well. I think that the ancients they had this tremendous understanding of the medicinal qualities of plants, more so than the general public does today. And we look at plants as just, okay, well, maybe it's something that I'll eat once in a while. But back in ancient times, they would see plants as something that you should consume regularly to maintain good health. So they would tell people to eat borage, or they would tell people to eat burdock roots, or they would tell people to eat stinging nettles, parsley, all these different herbs that we see as either mere flavoring agents or seasoning, or just a nice garnish. Whereas back in the day, in antiquity, they saw food as medicine, and I think it was Hippocrates who said, "Let your food be your medicine." Yeah, I was actually thinking about making borage wine after having this intoxicating experience today, solely from borage, no alcohol needed at all. I thought, this would make a very interesting wine. So I would like to one day make a whole gallon of borage water and then mix it with some brewer's yeast and add a bunch of sugar and let it ferment into a nice alcoholic beverage. That would be just amazing. I feel like Theo is a bit tan today. Yeah, the sun has that effect on me. It's the Middle Eastern genetics, I guess. I'm going to make borage water. It's very tasty. I recommend just taking borage leaves, stems, flowers, putting them in the blender, and just blending it. Add a little bit of honey, maybe like I would say a little bit over a teaspoon of honey. And then add like a fourth of a cup of lemon juice or lime juice. Lime juice would work also very well. And then just blend it for like 2 minutes. Just not soup. Like first go hard so that the blender can cut everything up. But once it cuts everything up, then just lower the power of the Vitamix or whatever blender that you're using, and just let it blend at a good pace for like 2 minutes. And then once it's done, just turn it off. Put a thinly chained colander over a pitcher, and then just pour it, and you'll see this beautiful Gatorade color. And serve it with some. I put a whole bunch of ice in the pitcher, so I put a whole bunch of ice in the pitcher, and then I poured it into it. It comes out really nice and cold, and just drink it outside. It's super refreshing. It's not super sweet, and you don't want something that's super sweet. Drinks that are really refreshing are not that sweet. They actually have maybe a bitter balance, like a really cold beer. They may be somewhat vinegary, like a cold wine in summertime, like a Zinfandel or a rosé, or maybe some Sauvignon Blanc. These types of wines have a slight vinegariness to them, slight sweetness to them. But that vinegariness or that bitterness in a drink is truly what makes a drink refreshing. If something is too sweet, then it's overwhelming and it's saturated. It's like something being too salty, and it becomes really unedible. It doesn't become pleasant. But when you have just a hint of sweetness, bitterness, maybe some vinegariness, and it's cold and it's hot outside, something about it. There's something about that balance of flavors that makes something so good and so satisfying. like I said, it's like a cold beer or like a cold kombucha or a cold wine, cold clear wine in the summertime when the rays of the Mediterranean, embrace you. There's something just so beautiful about that. I did something kind of maybe a little weird today. Not really weird, but it was something unusual for cooking. I have been experimenting with flours as far as flavor goes. I think flours are, within our day and age, within this generation, flours are heavily overlooked and ignored. They're not even thought about when it comes to culinary usage. But flours do have a lot of culinary usage, tremendous amounts. I mean, the most expensive spice in the world is literally a piece of a flower. It's called saffron. I mean, saffron is the most expensive spice in the world, and it comes from a flower. A lot of people don't know this, but capers. What are capers? What are they? Capers. Yeah, the plant self-seeds tremendously, 100%. Let me read to you the comments, and then I'll resume from where I left off here. I don't want to ignore your guys' comments here. Borge is said to be a good respirator. I already read this. Ashwagandha and ginkgo biloba can increase your memory and IQ by 24 points. Okay, I don't know. I have to look into that. What about putting borage in your porridge? And if you have too much, just put it in cold. Okay. The plant self-seeds tremendously. Very true. The internet says you shouldn't overconsume this plant. Okay, well, just take it. I mean, take it very moderately. I don't know, once a week, every 2 weeks or something. Chamomile tea is underrated. I agree. It is. So going back to flowers, capers. I mean, what are capers? Capers are literally flower buds. That's all capers are. Capers are literally just pickled flower buds. Flower buds that are harvested. They're plucked from a caper plant in the Mediterranean, Greece, Italy, and they're just soaked in a salt brine for weeks. And that's what capers are. Capers are delicious. Capers without brine taste, from what I have heard, and I've never tasted an unbrined caper before, but what I have heard is that without the brine, a caper tastes kind of like an olive. It's very bitter. But when you brine it, the bitterness and the saltiness make a very unique flavor. And capers go very good with fish, excellent with fish. They are a must if you're going to be making your own tartar sauce. Capers go excellent with pasta. Capers, anchovies, garlic, and chili. I mean, that is the perfect formula for a pasta dish. And the reason why capers are somewhat pricey is the process that it takes to harvest and make them and to store them. It's a lot of work to harvest capers. I mean, there are these small flower buds. So you have to get a team of workers to wake up before the sun rises and to harvest all of the caper flower buds before the sun rises. Because if the sun rises, then what eventually will happen is the capers will open up and you have a flower, and you no longer have a caper bud. You have a caper flower. Now the flower will eventually produce a fruit, which are also harvested and sold in a brine. And I've heard that the fruit actually has a richer flavor than the flower bud. But when it comes to the caper plant, the food of a caper plant, the market goes mainly for the flower buds, the caper buds. So when you go to the store, I mean, I've never seen caper fruit in a regular supermarket, but I always see caper buds in a supermarket, and they're flowers, and those are flower buds, and they are so effective in cooking. They have this umami-like flavor, and when you just take capers, mix it with capers, a little bit of its brine mixed with anchovies. You can throw in some olives in there if you want. Mash it in a pestle and mortar. Add some olive oil. Add a little bit of honey, a little bit of mustard. You make literally the best tasting vinaigrette that you can make. It's so tasty. And just mixing in a frying pan, chopped capers with a little bit of dried chili, a little bit of anchovies, and a little bit of garlic. I mean, you have the base for any good pasta recipe. Any good pasta recipe, the base of it. Now, I'm not talking about tomato sauce, although you could do this with tomato sauce. But with an old world, chili's not old world, but really with a basic pasta recipe that doesn't necessarily involve tomato sauce, caper, anchovy, and/or olives, garlic, and dried chili. Those together make a powerful flavor. Add in the brine from the capers. Add in some olive oil on a frying pan, and then add a little pasta water. Let it reduce down, and then add your pasta and mix it. Or, throw in some vegetables. Throw in some broccoli rabe, some kale on the frying pan, and those bitter greens are going to absorb the brine of the capers and the umami of the anchovy. And when you mix it with pasta and add some olive oil and Parmesan cheese, I mean, you're in heaven. This is food heaven. It's literally just starch with umami and vegetables just blows up in your mouth, and blows up your taste buds. Let's see. I tried concentrated ginkgo biloba and increased my memory and IQ. Oh, wow. I've heard that oregano is also good for memory. I think hops are flowers. That's right. Hops are indeed, they are flowers. And they are used by every brewery in the world. I think we don't realize how important flowers are in culinary. Any other basic recipes for someone getting into cooking? Someone getting into cooking. I would say pesto. I would say pesto is a really good thing to start with because it's so simple and it's so tasty. And once you know how to make a good pesto, you'll never stop making pesto. You'll be making pesto your whole life. And you'll start experimenting with different herbs. Instead of using basil, you can use parsley or oregano or mint or arugula. And I've used all of them. I've used all of those herbs for pesto making. Pesto is very simple. It's just an herb, traditionally basil. Basil is the best herb to use for pesto. So I would say basil mixed with some kind of a nut. So traditionally you would use pine nuts, but I almost always use walnuts because they're cheaper and they're very good. So basil, walnuts, a little bit of olive oil, some Parmesan cheese, and you can throw in some lemon juice if you want some acidity, but it's not really necessary. And just blend it or mash it in a pestle and mortar, and you have yourself a delicious herbal paste. And mix that in with some pasta. You're in heaven. My favorite pasta, honestly, I think spaghetti is overrated. Spaghetti is very good, don't get me wrong. But I think it's overrated. I think the best recipe for spaghetti is like a homemade basil tomato sauce. But to me, the best pasta is either fettuccine. So I would say these are my 5 favorite pastas to use. Of course, you can't. You have to have lasagna sheets. I mean, lasagna sheets to make lasagna, right? So lasagna sheets, 100%. It's in my top list. But then you have the orecchiette. Orecchiette or orecchietti. I think it's orecchietti. Orecchietti, the little ear pasta, is an excellent pasta to use. It's a little circular, oddly shaped pasta. It has little ridges around it so it can pick up sauce. It looks kind of like a little ear. And the orecchietti goes very good with greens. You're cooking broccoli rabe or cime di rapa, kale, collard greens. You cook those greens with olive oil, chili, garlic, capers, little anchovies for some umami, mixed in with a little pasta sauce, olive oil, of course, and then you toss in your orecchietti, and you mix it all up, and that starch from the orecchietti, it's going to mix with the vegetables, it's going to mix with the flavors, the different ingredients, it's going to make a very unique flavor. It's very good. Orecchietti, one of the best pastas in the world. And then you have your tagliatelle. Tagliatelle is a flat, square-shaped pasta, long, square, noodle, flat, long, square noodle. Has an excellent texture, especially when it's made with eggs. Very good texture. I love it with meat sauce or pesto. And then you have your fettuccine. Fettuccine is like a mix between the tagliatelle and the spaghetti. You know, it's like kind of squarish, but it's thin, it's long, and it's so good. I mean, you can't go wrong with the fettuccine. And then you have your pappardelle or pappardelle. Pappardelle is a widely shaped. It's a very wide pasta. It's not as wide as a lasagna sheet, but nonetheless, it's like imagine a wide fettuccine. It's like or like a tagliatelle, but even wider, you know. And it's just so delicious. Yesterday I made some very thin, square, long ribbon pasta, and I mixed it with some homemade pesto, and it was just. I wasn't outside eating it. I wish I was, but I was eating it, and one of the best pesto dishes I've ever made. It was so delicious, guys, and the ribbons, just everything goes so well with it. Everything goes so well with it. So yeah, I drink oils from like argan, black seed, or Siberian cedar nut oil. Very interesting. Canada is the New Jersey of North America. Okay. Anyway, I've been streaming for over an hour. So let's have something other than this green juice. You know what? Let's pour. Let's have another drink with the Borage water. Let's have a little bit more Borage water. Rusty Shackleford, Canada is good for game hunting like moose or wild turkey. I went to Canada once. I was there for 2 weeks back in the spring of 2014. Canada is very interesting. It's like you're in the transition point between America and Great Britain. That's what Canada feels like when you're there. You're kind of in England. You know, you're in America. It feels mainly that you're in America, but then it's like there's some parts of it, some aspect of Canadian society. It's very much like, it's very much like England. It gives you that UK feel. I went to New Jersey one time. I went to a black neighborhood in New Jersey. That was an interesting experience. My father was speaking at a black church in New Jersey, and we were the only people there. I think we were the only Caucasians that were there. I don't say white, but Middle Eastern people technically were Caucasians. And I think we were the only people there that were Caucasian. And there was this Jewish guy, I remember, who was with us. And he was terrified. He was so scared to be in a black neighborhood. I remember. And I thought it was interesting, That was the first time. Well, it wasn't the first time because I grew up in the Bay Area, so we used to go to Oakland all the time. And Oakland is predominantly African-American city. But this was the first time that I was in. It was like I was in an inner city neighborhood. Because when I would go to Oakland, yes, Oakland is predominantly black, but I never really went to like an inner city neighborhood in Oakland. I always stayed in the downtown district. Always stayed in the central part of the city where there was always a lot of people there. But I was in the middle of this neighborhood. I mean, you have people just. It was like the stereotypical African American neighborhood. I mean, you have people sitting in front of their. You had all these homes that were just crammed together. I remember all these homes. You know how the houses look like remember that show Hey Arnold? You know how the houses look in Hey Arnold? You had the stoops. Each little home had a stoop, and they weren't. They were kind of like homes, kind of like condominiums. You know, these tall structures crammed together. They had that very old school sort of East Coast neighborhood appearance. It's basically what they were. They were East Coast style neighborhoods, and each housing building, had a stoop, and you would see African Americans, just hanging out on the stoops everywhere. People just sitting in front of their homes on the stoops, and people just sitting around, and it was very stereotypical. It was exactly how you would imagine it, and I thought it was interesting. I wasn't scared or anything like that. I thought it was interesting. Here we were, Sunday afternoon. My dad was about to talk in a black church. He was about to give his testimony on how he left Islam to this African American church, and I remember I thought it was interesting. I didn't feel scared. A lot of people would feel scared, but you can usually tell when you're in a dangerous situation, and in this case, we really weren't. I mean, like, it was near a church and just a bunch of regular folks sitting around. There was definitely a crime problem in the neighborhood, but in that particular moment, I didn't feel like I was in any danger. But I remember there was this Jewish guy who was with us, and he was so scared. I remember he was like terrified. And I remember just jokingly saying, we're the only light-skinned people here. Yeah, we got 2 Palestinians and a Jew. And I said, we're the only light-skinned people here. And this Jewish guy turns around. He says, would you shut up? And I was laughing. I mean, he was so scared, this guy. He was so scared, but that was my experience. Anyway, guys, it's been over an hour. It's been an hour and a half. So we're going to take a trip. We're going to take a trip, guys, okay? So let's go take a trip. So last week we had some Greek Retsina made by the Greek winery Kortakis. Today we are going back to Greece. We're going to Athens. And we are drinking a product by the Greek distillery called Athena. And this is Greek American Ouzo. So we're going back to you know what? We're not going to Greece. My mistake. So this is made in America. This is made in America, but it's a Greek American operation. Okay, so we're actually going to Chicago. We're not going to Greece. Sorry, we're going to Chicago. We're going to the Greek enclave of Chicago, and we're going to try a little bit of ouzo. So this is ouzo. Ouzo is a distilled alcoholic beverage that is made with fennel seed, and I think also star anise that has been fermented and then distilled. So this is there's no fruit in it. So usually distilled drinks are made from some kind of a fruit. So apple. In the case of I think vodka is made with apples. I think the Serbian rakia is made with plums. You have distilled drinks made from boiling apples. Like in Georgia, they make a drink where they boil apples and then they ferment the liquid and then they distill it. So this is a drink that is made from distilled, fermented fennel seed tea. That's literally what this is, guys. They take fennel seed, they boil it in water, they ferment it, then they distill it, and they make ouzo. And when you drink ouzo, it has the most potently anise flavor I've ever experienced in a drink. And I've had fennel tea, and I've had anise hyssop tea, which is also very good. I've had what's it called? I've had tea made from fennel leaves, fennel seed tea, and they all have this nice, pleasant anise flavor, but nothing can compare to ouzo. When you drink it, it's like, imagine taking the sweet, how sometimes when you bite into fennel root has like a slight sweetness to it, a slight anise, a sweet anise flavor, but then there's sort of this grassy earthiness that creeps in. You don't get that with ouzo. With the ouzo, you get just the absolute sweetest characteristic of fennel on your palate. So here we go, guys. Here's some American Greek ouzo. We're going to Chicago, so let's look at the... you know what? I'm actually going to mix this with the borage, guys. Who cares? So this is ouzo infused with a little bit of borage, so it's going to have extra power. This stuff is, let's see, 46.5% alcohol. Serve as an appetite. Wait, what? Serve as an aperitif over ice with water, straight up and on the rocks. Greek-style specialty liquor. Product of the USA. 46.5% alcohol. And it says, according to the Surgeon General, women should not drink alcoholic beverages during pregnancy. I have to read this to you guys because some of you guys might get angry at me. Because of the risk of birth defects, consumption of alcohol beverages impairs your ability to drive a car. We're not in a car right now. Or operate machinery. The only machinery I'm operating right now is this computer. So let's give this a try. So this is the ouzo here, infused with some borage. Oh yeah, that fennel mixed with alcohol aroma. Just smelling it, it just hits the back of your throat. So here we go. Let's give this a try. Ooh, it hits your nose. Hits your nose, man. This stuff hits your nose. And that fennel, guys, you take a fennel bulb from the grocery store. You bite into it. You ever bought into just raw fennel root? I have. You get this slight sweetness from it, but then there's this grass. Just imagine the sweetness of fennel, but like 50 times stronger. That's what this stuff is. The fennel seeds, I would argue, fennel seeds have the strongest concentration of anise flavor in the plant. So you have the fennel bulb, you have the leaves, and you got the seeds. And then you got the flowers. You can use the flowers. The seeds are the ones that have the highest concentration of the anise flavor. Ooh. This is like drinking black licorice. That's what this tastes like. Imagine, so the taste of black licorice, that's what ouzo tastes like. It's like drinking black licorice. That's what this stuff tastes like. This stuff is very good, guys. I mean, the flavor is just amazing. Good night, Veliko Simic. The flavor is just so amazing, guys. This is amazing. It hits the back of your throat so strong. It makes you want to cough. Theo, let's see here, hold on. If you add a bit of water to ouzo, you'll get a milky color. Ooh, interesting. Theo, you and your father have been around in the Christian scene preaching against Islam. Yeah, my dad did it for. My dad has been doing it for over 15 years. Did you guys ever interact with or collage with other Christians like David Wood or Robert Spencer? My dad did. My dad did do some stuff with Robert Spencer years ago. Yeah, my dad and Robert both were in a documentary that was done decades ago. It was called "What the West Needs to Know." It's actually a very educational documentary about Islam, especially the history of Islam. It's very, very good, very educational. It's called "What the West Needs to Know." And you can see both my father and Robert Spencer in that event. And my father and Robert Spencer they have shared platforms for various events in the past. So, yeah. Sambuca tastes similar. I love black licorice. So do I. Sambuca is too sweet at the same time. I have Black Jack chewing gum that tastes like black licorice. Interesting. Yeah, Ouzo just tastes like black licorice. That's what it tastes like. So let's get into let's get a little bit into politics here. So I've been reading this book. It's called Kosovo Crisis by Vojin Joksimovic. I'm not done with the book yet. Yeah, I'm kind of a slow reader, to be honest with you, so whatever. Plus, I don't read all the time. I'm usually just writing or reading the news. Very interesting story that Mr. Joksimovic presents in the book. He brings up the story of a town in Kosovo called Račak. Račak was a place of a lot of media attention back in the 1990s because there were reports that the Serbs had massacred the Albanians and that 40 or so Albanians were killed in the town of Račak. So the Serbs were accused of massacring dozens of Albanians in Račak in Kosovo. And the American government began to bash the Serbs and tell the Serbs, oh, you're murderers, and this is terrible, and we're going to bomb you if you don't stop fighting the KLA. Very interesting situation in the war in Kosovo between the Albanians and the Serbs, between really the Serbs and the KLA. Because I don't like saying between Albanians and Serbs because many Albanians were against the KLA and they had zero interest in joining the KLA, and they had no interest in joining the cause of the KLA, and they in fact had no problem with being under the Yugoslav government. So I say that it was a war. It was an anti-terrorism war. It was a counter-terrorist operation that the Yugoslav government in Belgrade was conducting. And it truly was counter-terrorism because you had the KLA, they were committing terrorist acts, they were murdering police officers, kidnapping police officers, they were kidnapping civilians, they were murdering officials. There was a Serbian official, I think he was the mayor, he was some sort of a politician. If I had to guess, I would say he was the mayor of a particular town in Kosovo, and they found his body. His eyes were mutilated, his face was mutilated, his body was mutilated, and it was a very grisly murder. And there were a lot of stories like this. There was a shooting that took place in which you had several Serbian youths who went to a bar, and then KLA gunmen went into the bar. They opened fire and they murdered 6 Serbs. And this was a very, very big story. I know that in America we hear a shooting and we think, oh yeah, and no big deal, 20 people murdered in a Walmart, and we're pretending that this is a stable society. But in Serbia, they make a much bigger deal about it because, well, I think it's because it doesn't happen so much over there. They're not used to it like we are. Americans are very used to violence because America is a very violent society. And the Serbs, they had no choice but to conduct an anti-terrorism or counter-terrorism operation against the KLA. So, fast forward to Račak, the KLA said, oh, look, we found 40 bodies of dead Albanians. They were murdered by the Serbs, and this is how bad the Serbs were. So they had a forensic specialist from Pristina look at the bodies, and this forensic specialist concluded that These people were not mutilated. There were no signs of torture. There were no signs of them being executed. These people had bullet holes, but there were no signs that they had been executed. And a lot of the bodies had been tampered with, so a lot of the mutilations or the lacerations on the bodies were done after the people were dead. And they had all these signs that the lacerations were done later on. So in other words, there was tampering of the bodies that was done. And then, very interestingly enough, before the massacre was reported, there was a counterterrorism operation that was done in Račak. You had Serbian forces, Serbian officers go into the town of Račak. They had nothing to hide because they actually invited the Western media to come to the town to observe the counterterrorism operation being done. 2 American journalists, both writing for the Associated Press, arrived in Račak, and they wrote about the operation. They watched the operation, and they said, it was a basic operation, basic gun battle between Serbian forces and the KLA. And the KLA was, of course, defeated because the KLA, for the most part, was a bunch of riffraff who were heavily undertrained, especially in comparison to the Yugoslav forces, who were very well trained. And that was it. There was no report of a massacre. The AP journalists didn't see a massacre. I think they found maybe 1 dead body, and that was it. And then I want to say days or weeks after the operation, all of a sudden there were these talks of a massacre in Račak. And all of a sudden they found these bodies. And the KLA said, oh, look, here's the ditch. This is where they had all these bodies lined up in a ditch. And they said, look, this is where they did a mass execution. They shot all these people. But when the site was observed, they didn't find that many bullets, or they didn't find that many bullet cartridges in the ditch. So if this was a mass execution, if this was the mass execution of 40 people, you're talking about dozens of people. You're talking about lots and lots of gun rounds being triggered. And you don't find many bullet cartridges in the site of the crime, the supposed site of the crime. So that was a point of suspicion that there was media manipulation that was taking place. Then, after the forensic specialists in Pristina looked at the bodies and said, it looks like these bodies were tampered with, there were some forensic specialists from Finland who came, and they looked at the bodies and they observed the bodies. Now, this is Finland. Finland is not a country that's pro-Russia. It has a history of war with Russia, so you can't say that there was bias going on. And the specialists from Finland, the Finnish specialists, they looked at the bodies, and they also concluded the same thing that the forensic specialists in Pristina concluded. Then there were a number of articles that came out in the Western media that basically concluded that a lot of people were fooled by KLA manipulation, that the KLA was manipulating people into thinking that there was a massacre when there wasn't a massacre. These were people who had died in the war, and they simply just took the corpses, lined them up in a ditch, and said, oh, look, massacre done by evil Serbs, and people believed it. So this makes me wonder about Bucha. Similar story. Bucha was taken by the Ukrainians. Russian forces left. Within the first few days of Bucha being retaken by the Ukrainians, there was no talk of a massacre. Just like after the operation in Račak, there was no talk of a massacre. And Račak was under the control of the KLA. Even though the Serbs defeated the KLA, they were dominating the KLA, Račak was technically under the control of the KLA. There was no talk of a massacre for days. Then, all of a sudden, there was a massacre in Račak. Well, why didn't they say it initially? Same thing with Bucha. The mayor of Bucha did not bring up that there was a massacre in his town right after the Ukrainians retook it from the Russians. All of a sudden, days later, there was a massacre in Bucha. There is massive media manipulation taking place. That's my position about Bucha. I do not trust the media narrative, and I think as time goes on, people will realize, I think the truth will come out that there was manipulation taking place. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And then, of course, you have the case of the two Nazis in Bucha. One of them saying to the other, "Hey, if they have white patches or white armbands, can we kill them? Because the people who are for Ukraine, they wear a yellow band. The people who are pro-Russia, they wear a white band." And one Nazi tells the other, and this happened. This was recorded in Bucha. One Nazi tells the other, "If they have white armbands, can we shoot them?" And the other says, "F yes, you can." Why are they shooting people with white armbands? Because they were shooting people who were on the side of Russia. That's what happened in Bucha. I think that there is massive media manipulation taking place. We've seen already obvious signs of this. I mean, there was people saying, "Oh, the Russians are plucking teeth out of Ukrainians. They're so evil, just like Nazi, just like Schindler's List, plucking teeth out." But then they talked to the local dentist in the town, and the dentist said those teeth were not plucked out by Russian soldiers. Those are teeth that were in my clinic, that were in my dental clinic. It was stolen from me, and it was used for propaganda. Or like, for example, the Ukrainians were saying, Russian soldiers raping infants. That turned out to be a lie. Turned out to be lies. There was a Ukrainian woman. She was some kind of a propagandist. She was in the Ukrainian parliament. I'm going to try to look her up real quick. But she was making up lies. Let me see here. Hold on. That the Russian soldiers were raping infants. They're raping infants, guys. And it was such a blatant lie that even there were Ukrainians in the media saying that she should be kicked out from her position in the Ukrainian parliament. And she was. She was eventually thrown out. Let me try to find her name. And it was just a blatant lie. So, we can't just sit here and say, "Oh, well, the media says this, the New York Times said this." You can't just fall for the manipulation. You can't just automatically have this knee-jerk reaction and just accept the stories. Let me see here. I'm going to try to find the story. But yeah, I'm just not going to fall. Think about it. America right now is in the middle of a proxy war with Russia. Middle of a proxy war with Russia. You don't think that they're going to lie about some stuff to make the Russians look evil? Kind of like, Saddam Hussein is evil. Kind of like, Bashar al-Assad is evil. Kind of like, Iraqi soldiers are killing children in incubators. Remember that one? Let me try to find the story here. Ukraine, let's see here. I'll try to find it here. Russian soldiers rape babies, lie. Let's see here. I forgot. Let me try to see if I can find it. Parliament. I need to find the story. I hate this. Lies. Whatever. What do you think about the Srebrenica genocide in 1995? I need to look into it. I haven't seriously studied that. It may be the first time I tried it. I'll let you know. Who cares? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. I have blackjack chewing gum. You guys aren't even talking about anything that I'm talking about here, which is a damn shame. I'm kind of, I don't know. This, how many people are even listening to me? I don't even know. What was her name? Ukrainian woman. DuckDuckGo. And the thing is that it's easier to be pro-Ukraine than it is to be pro-Russia, right? Like it's easier just to believe in everything they're saying against Russia and everything they're saying that's pro-Ukraine. It's just so much easier to do that than it is to be skeptical of the narrative. It's just so much easier because like if I'm pro-Ukraine, if I'm pro-Ukraine and I'm talking to a guy who's pro-Russia, and he's like, listen, this whole thing with Bucha, I'm not sure. And all I need to do is just smugly say, source. Go on Google, literally do a 3-second Google search and be like, here is the evidence, New York Times. That's all I need to do. Right there. Done. I look good. I look like I'm winning the argument. I look like I have all the information. Whereas when you're skeptical, you have to go to like DuckDuckGo, and you can't go to Google because Google, everything's controlled. Have you noticed that the search results for Google are just completely controlled and stagnant? Like I'll search for something on Google, and I'll get most of the stuff that I get now, most of the search results. And it's not just with Russia, it's with almost anything. Most of the search results that I get from a Google search literally have nothing to do with what I searched for. Nothing. Like I'll search for something, I'll get the opposite of what I'm searching for. Have you guys noticed this? And so I'll say, okay, let me just change the search a little bit. Maybe I'll get better search results, right? So I'll add a word, or I'll take away a word, or usually I add words just to make my search more specific, and I'll literally get the same damn search results as I got before. And Google never used to be this way. This has been going on within the past, 3 years or so. But it wasn't this way before. It was not this way. I remember years ago going on Google, searching for stuff and actually getting stuff that I searched for. Same thing with YouTube. YouTube is owned by Google, so you get the same thing. Same thing with YouTube. I go onto YouTube and I search for something and I get like a whole bunch of crap that I never even searched for. Like I didn't even search for this stuff. But YouTube is like, well, in accordance to your past search results or your past search history, we're just going to give you all these videos that are absolutely, literally nothing, do not pertain at all to whatever it is that you're searching for. Dude, guys, it is annoying. It is aggravating. So aggravating. So aggravating. Here it goes, guys. I think I found the story. I've been using DuckDuckGo and I've been using Yandex. How about Katyn massacre of 22,000 Polish military officers by Soviet Russia NKWD in 1940 who blamed Nazi for doing that? They blamed the Nazis. You see, I have actually heard the opposite about Katyn. I have heard that the Nazis were the ones blaming the Russians for that. And it was actually part of German propaganda to try to get the Poles on the side of the Germans. So I would also question Katyn. That's my opinion. Could be wrong. But communists weren't great. The communists did a lot of evil things, so I'm not going to be like completely pro-Soviet Union here, okay? Let me see something here, guys. Parliament, no. Let's see here. Here it is. Here's the story. Here he goes, guys. For those of you who smugly express your support for Russia and, you try to come across as some edgelord, NATO apologist. Oh, it burns the back of my throat. Here is the story. This is why I do not fully trust the narrative. This is why I question the narrative when it comes to Ukraine. Instead of just being a smug NATO supporter who's like, source, here's the New York Times said this. MSNBC said this. Therefore, it's true. This is why I say you got to wait. Ludmila Denisova, disgraced ombudswoman, fired by Ukraine parliament, admits she lied about rapes committed by Russian soldiers. She said that she exaggerated reports of sexual crimes by Russian soldiers on Ukrainian civilians in a bid to convince the world to provide weapons and pressure on behalf of Kiev. So all this stuff about, he says that that Ukraine's got a Nazi problem. Oh yeah, what about Russian soldiers? I read on MSNBC, NBC, ABC, the whole alphabet. I read that the Russians are committing atrocities and crimes. When I know damn well that NATO is in the middle of a proxy war with the Russians, and of course they're going to be saying stuff to make the Russians look bad. A week after Ukrainian lawmakers fired Ombudswoman Lyudmila Denisova, she has reportedly admitted that she exaggerated reports and lied about rape by Russian soldiers to gain more sympathy and weapons from the rest of the world to continue the war with Russia. Russian news agency Sputnik made the revelation in a bombshell report. This is from the International Business Times, in case you're wondering. Here she is, the liar. Just a week after her dismissal as the chief of Ukraine's rights panel, Denisova, in an interview to a local Ukrainian publication, admitted that she lied about the incidents of rape. She said that she exaggerated reports, etc., etc. Denisova claimed that her lies would help earn sympathy for Ukraine and would convince the rest of the world to supply weapons. This article has literally repeated itself like 3 times. Since the beginning of the war, Denisova's dramatic claims have been reproduced in dozens of respectable outlets, including CNN, Washington Post. Hello, guys, seriously. It is so easy to look good being pro-Ukraine, right? Because the media is on your side. If I'm like, you know what, guys, I'm not sure about this whole Ukraine thing, man. It's got some weird stuff over there. Got torchlights and some Nazi shit over there, guys. You got like Nazi Boy Scouts and they're praising Nazi collaborators and some weird shit going on here, guys. Yeah, but this article on CNN says that Russian soldiers rape kids. And you're like, do you really trust that? Like, do you think that there's... don't you think that there could be some bias in the reporting because there's a proxy war going on? Well, actually, it's right here in the mainstream sources. What do you got, RT? See, you look like you have the truth on your side because all you need to do, like, for guys like me, we got to spend hours researching Ukraine. We got to spend hours. We got to look through we have to cut through the controlled search results of Google. We got to go through the stuff. We got to find different news sources, go to different European media outlets. Don't just go to American. Find stories and find admissions and find, stories like this where people are admitting that they lied. You really have to wait for the truth to come out. There's that saying that says something like, a lie will travel the whole entire world before the truth can put its shoes on. That is true. Because you got to wait. Right when the war began, boom, you had Bucha, right? In April of 2022. Boom, Bucha. There's Bucha. Was it April or March? I don't remember. I think it was in April. I'm not sure. But the war began in late February. And then it didn't take that long for Bucha to pop up. Yeah. Bucha massacre. March. So yeah, you had February. Boom, March, Bucha. So very, very advantageous if they have a story of a massacre so they can harken back to Nazi Germany to make Russia look evil. Like, it just, boom, right there. So Washington Post, CNN. So in other words, you could have been one of those cocky-ass guys and you could have said, CNN and the Washington Post has an article here about Russians raping kids. See? Claims were often taken at face value, of course, because everything the Ukrainians say is freaking true, with reports claiming that the Russians raped a 6-month-old girl with a teaspoon. I mean, they're just making up stuff. And this is the type of I mean, listen, the Ukrainian nationalists committed horrendous crimes back in the Second World War. But, hey, those murderers, they're heroes, according to Ukraine. How the hell could you trust these Frankensteins? She looks like Frankenstein. She also looks like a mummy. She also claimed that the baby was verbally and anally raped and that her 9-month-old daughter was raped with a candle. Oh, yeah. Let's just make up any nightmare scenario we can think of. So it came out of her sick-ass head. So really, this was taking place. These stories, they weren't in reality. They were in her sick-ass warped brain, guys. Her ouster and eventual admission to the lies now raise questions about the allegations made against Russian soldiers of committing sex crimes on Ukrainian civilians. Can we please have a little bit of logic here and not be so gullible, not be so quick to believe the stories, not be so fast and just absorbing, anything that's pro-Ukraine, guys? I mean, we are in the middle of a war, right? I mean, not directly, but America is in a proxy war with Russia. And if the Ukrainians did an atrocity, do you think the Americans are just gonna, oh yeah, look, the Ukrainians are doing bad, guys? Her lie sounded like it was written by a psycho and posted on a deranged form. Yeah, absolutely. It came out of her sick-ass, twisted brain. Reminds me of this saying, what takes 10 brilliant men to build, it takes one fool. Wisdom. That's wisdom right there. That right, yeah. I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to read it. What takes 10 brilliant men to build, it takes one fool to destroy. There's a Middle Eastern proverb. A fool throws one stone into a well, and it takes 10 wise men to get it out. It's easy to kill. It's easy to lie. It's easy to destroy. What's very difficult? Telling the truth can be very difficult, especially when you're facing adversity. Going to medical school to save people's lives is very difficult. Takes a lot of training. Takes a lot of knowledge. A brain surgeon or any sort of surgeon goes through years of schooling to get to his position so that he can save lives. But any idiot can kill somebody. Doesn't take any time to kill somebody. Doesn't take any training or intelligence to kill somebody. Doesn't take any training or intelligence or serious knowledge and wisdom to lie. Anybody can lie, but very few people have the courage to tell the truth in the face of adversity. It's very easy for anybody can tell a lie, right? Anybody can slander, anybody can mock, anybody can scoff, anybody can do libel and try to ruin and destroy someone's reputation. But it takes courage, serious courage, to tell the truth in the face of adversity. That takes courage, guys. That takes serious courage. That's why I don't believe these stories. I do not fully believe them, guys. CNN said, Washington Post. Oh, well, this woman's full of shit. You're believing the bullshit. How do we get American to be on our side? I don't know. Let's see. Russian soldier rape baby. How old will baby be in story? I don't know. What do you think, Ludmila? Let's say 6-month-old infant. Yes, perfect. Make up lie. Speaking of Russia and Ukraine, have you guys ever seen the film Brother 2? Has anyone here ever seen the film Brother 2? Have any of you guys ever seen the film Brother 2? That is such a good movie, guys. It's a Russian film that was made back in the 90s. Actually, in 2020, President Putin has apologized to Polish people for Katyn massacre. Oh, okay. Did Putin apologize? 2010. I did not know this. Okay, let's look this up. Putin, 2010 apology. Polish people. My Lord Jesus Christ. Lord Jesus Christ, Goose Hunter, I'm so happy that you told me this. So Putin admits, Hold on. What did Putin say? We bow our head. Okay, this is what Putin said. Let's read it together. Okay, this is from the New York Times. Okay. New York Times. Okay, let's read this. Let me lower down my screen here. Okay. So it says here, this is from 2010. Prime Minister Vladimir V. Putin on Wednesday became the first Russian or Soviet leader to join Polish officials in commemorating the anniversary of the murder of thousands of Polish officers by the Soviet Union at the beginning of World War II. Mr. Putin cast the executions as one tragedy out of many wrought by what he called the Soviet Union's totalitarian regime. Guys, I'm telling you, it's bullshit what they say about Russia. It's so much bullshit what they say. They'll say, oh, look, Russia is going back to communism. How can it be going back to communism when you literally have stories like this? We bow our heads to those who bravely met death here, Mr. Putin said at a site in the Katyn forest close to the Russian city of Smolensk, where 70 years ago, members of the Soviet secret police executed more than 20,000 Polish officers captured after the Soviet army invaded Poland in 1939. So Putin apologizes about the massacre of Polish people by the Soviet Union, Polish officers by the Soviet Union, but Ukraine banned the movie about the Volyn massacre. I wish people could open up their eyes. I wish people could open up their eyes. They say, oh, Russia, but the Ukrainians admitted to the massacre when they needed to. For years, the Ukrainians have been adamant about not talking about Volyn, banning a movie about Volyn, not refusing to go to a presentation of the film Volyn for the Ukrainian the Ukrainian ambassador to Poland, praising those who committed the massacre, building memorials and naming streets after those who massacred Polish people. For example, naming a street after Ula Samchuk, the collaborator, who praised the Babi Yar massacre, one of the worst massacres of Jews in the Holocaust. Or Zelensky giving an award to a Ukrainian OUN officer who annihilated an entire Polish village. But let's ignore the fact that, wow, Russia actually admitted that it did wrong. Turkey does not admit to the Armenian genocide. Japan does not admit to Nanking. Ukraine does not admit to Volyn. But Russia admits to its wrongs? Tells us a lot about the differences between Russia and its enemies. But Russia is so evil, guys. So evil. Raping 6-month-old baby. So evil. So evil. Putin is fascist. He's fascist. But let's support Ukrainian fascists. Let's praise Ukrainian fascists who collaborated with the Nazis, who butchered people, who butchered tens of thousands of people. Let's name streets after the murderers. I mean, there was a Russian electrical engineer who had a street named after him in Ukraine. The Ukrainians said, we must change his name, remove his name from street, because he's a Russian bad. Okay, so they gave it to a vote to the people of Kiev. What do you want this street to be named? Whose name do you want for this street? Right? Who should we rename this street after? The majority of the people who voted said, what? Ula Samchuk. So you're telling me that you remove the name of this Russian electric engineer because he's Russian, right? He wasn't a murderer, wasn't a rapist, wasn't a mass murderer, wasn't a Nazi collaborator, didn't do any of that shit. Just a freaking electrical engineer. He was like a Russian Thomas Edison. And you got rid of his name and said, no, we want Ula Samchuk. Do people not see how insane this is? This is like saying, okay, we have a street named after Thomas Edison. We have Thomas Edison Street. No. We want to remove his name and replace it with a KKK leader. That's how insane this is. This is complete insanity, guys. But no, Ukraine, they're the bad guys. They're the bad guys. Because they were invaded. They were invaded. Yeah, they were invaded. Do you know who else was invaded? The KLA was invaded. The Nazis were invaded. The Japanese imperialists were invaded. A lot of bastards were invaded. They were invaded. I don't know. Time Magazine, CNN, Washington Post, they said this. But nobody can think. People refuse to see the reality for what it is. And when the reality is presented to them, they gaslight and they deflect. Because that's the best they got. All of those that doesn't apologize are all nations with fascinations for fascism. Yeah, absolutely. Fascination for fascism. These tell us that the ghost of fascism will resurrect and push the world toward the next war. Absolutely, we agree. Fascism has not died, everybody. It has always been amongst us. It's here in the United States. It's in Ukraine. It's in Japan. You can see it. It's in Turkey. You can see it, guys. You can see it, and it's going to resurrect. Oh, that's not true. Fascism's not going to come back. Ooh. How in the hell do you explain Ukraine, guys? The fact that we are supporting fascists in Ukraine, the fact that Ukraine has a cult of personality for fascist, the fact that it has memorials and it has infrastructure named after fascists, the fact that it will deny the crimes that its supposed heroes have done, and the fact that we justify collaborating with these people in the name of fighting Russia, don't tell me fascism can't come back. Because when fascism does come back, guys, it's not going to be done in the name of some blatant evil. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, we hate the Jews, kill Jews. That's not what it's going to be. And if you think that a revival of fascism has to be just that, it has to be like blatantly people getting up and say, oh yeah, we hate Jews, you're naive or you're a liar. You're just dishonest. Because people are smart enough to know that if they're going to push for an agenda, they better be doing some tactic in which they can try to get everyone to agree with them. They're going to try to have overlap with people, ideological overlap or political overlap, to convince people, to persuade people to be on their side. It's not going to be, oh yeah, we hate Jews. Oh yeah, we love Hitler. Hoo-ha, hoo-ha. That's some Hollywood bullshit. Okay, that's some CNN bullshit. Oh yeah, we interviewed some KKK guy in Alabama, and he lives in a 1,000 square foot house in bum shit Timbuktu in Alabama, and no one even listens to him. Oh yeah, the leader of the KKK. No one even listens to him. That's some CNN bullshit. Okay. It's not going to be that. It's going to be, oh, well, we have to help these people. Yeah, but they're Nazis. Oh, that doesn't matter. They're defending their country against imperialist Russia. We have to help them. And if you don't want to help them, then you're on the side of the imperialists. You're a Putin bot. And that's what you are. You are no different than a Stalinist. You are a Stalinist sympathizer. You're a Putin sympathizer. That's what it's going to be. It's not going to be, oh yeah, we hate the Jews. Some Hollywood bullshit. It's going to begin as, if you don't work with us in collaborating with these people, or if we don't fight the Russians, then the world's going to end. And if you don't agree with us, then you're evil. That's what it's going to be. And you're already seeing it, guys. It's very simple. This is not complicated stuff. There's even a term for this, Motte and Bailey or something. What's it called? Motte and Bailey. Is it Motte and Bailey or Motte and Bailey? I don't even know. What's the pronunciation for this thing? Motte and Bailey. What is it? Motte and Bailey or Motte and Bailey?
Motte and Bailey.
Motte and Bailey. So this is the Motte and Bailey tactic. So the Motte and Bailey tactic is, in order to get people to agree with something that would otherwise be egregious or wrong, you get people to first agree with something that generally people can agree on, right? So generally people can agree that conquering a sovereign country is wrong, right? So like Russia invading Ukraine, that's wrong. Ukraine's a sovereign country. This is evil. Generally, you can get people to agree with that, right? That's really easy. So that's the moat, right? So there's the moat and then there's the bailey. So the idea of a moat and bailey is that you have the moat around the castle. You have the general defense around the castle. And the idea is the whole concept of moat and bailey is to break people's defenses to get them to agree with something that they otherwise would not agree with. So you have the moat, right, which is the general defense around the castle, or it's like the structure that's around the main castle that defends the main castle. So that's what you have to get past. You have to get past that before you can get into the part of the castle that you really want, right, which is the bailey. So there's the moat and there's the bailey. What's the moat? The moat is Russia invaded a sovereign country. Oh, so we have to support Ukraine. Oh, okay, fine. So right there, you just broke through people's defenses, right? You just broke through them. Well, and here comes the bailey. Well, there are some Nazis in Ukraine, and there is a cult of personality for Nazis, and they do love Nazi collaborators, and some of their biggest historical figures are Nazi collaborators, and they have some monuments dedicated to them, and and they do torchlight ceremonies every year in dedication to Stepan Bandera, who was a Nazi collaborator, and they do revere Andrei Melnik, and they do revere Roman Stuchovich, and yeah, these guys were bad, but this is part of their culture, and I mean, you can't support Russia. I mean, you don't want to support Russia because then you would be supporting fascists who are actually alive today. So, we have to do this together. That's the bailey. That's the bailey. Well, not all Nazis are bad. Some of them are good. And some of them have really good intentions, They have really good intentions. And they're not really fascists, right? The real fascists are like those torchlight guys over there in North Carolina somewhere. That's the real fascists, but not these guys. And by doing this tactic, they break down people's defenses, you see. And that's how it works. Bang it, bang it, bang it, bang it, bang it. That's how this shit works, guys. That's how this shit works. Oh, concentration camps in Ukraine. They're putting ethnic Russians in camps. Oh, well, actually, those Russians are pro-Putin. So that means that they're pro-imperialist. So that means that they're enemies of Ukraine. So that's okay. Well, Ukrainian cops, they're raiding Russian churches. They're arresting Russian priests. They're putting them in camps. Let's say hypothetically that this happens, and some of that actually has already happened. Well, those churches are, they're pro-Putin, so it's okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. It's like those people who hate Islam and they're actually Nazis. They claim that they're against Islamic terrorism, but they're actually Nazis. Those exist. I know for a fact that those exist. Oh, well, they're building camps over there. That's kind of creepy, don't you think? Oh, yeah, but they're putting Muslims in there. They're Middle Eastern folks, You can kill those people. It's okay. Oh, okay. It's like, in Sweden, there's a party called the Sweden Democrats. Literally, the party was founded by SS members. I mean, it's a far-right party. And they're like, what, second or third most popular party in Sweden now. It's like, well, there's a party that was founded by Nazis in Sweden, and they've gained a lot of popularity. Yeah, but they're against illegal immigration, so they're okay. Oh, okay. So the Mott would be they're against illegal immigration, so they're the good guys. The Bailey is now you can actually support far right lunatics. Oh, well, that's fine. Bam. Okay. See how it works? See how it works? It's very simple. It's very simple. It's not like the media. They'll have these stories where they'll interview like, oh, the leader of the KKK, as if we're back in the 1920s, and the KKK is like lynch mobbing people every week or something. It's like, then you look at the video and it's literally some overweight middle-aged man with square glasses and a baseball cap and a really filthy T-shirt that's like triple his size. And he's in a bar somewhere, and he's like, yeah, well, I was in the Klan. I'm leading the Klan. Like, this is the leader of the KKK, guys. And, so scary. But then the same media will say, well, we're interviewing the leader of Azov. He's one of the good guys. It's like, well, Azov's Nazi. No, he's one of the good guys because he's fighting the Russians. You see how that shit works, guys? It is sneaky as the devil himself. It's some sneaky, devilish shit. Meanwhile, Italy returns to Mussolini's. Yeah, this Meloni woman. I mean, guys, it is legitimately terrifying what's happening right now in the world. I was thinking about this yesterday. I'm thinking about pouring another glass of ouzo just to calm myself down. I am legitimately terrified about what's happening in the world. I am horrified about how fascism is becoming gradually acceptable. I am legitimately scared. I'm sincerely scared, guys. Sincerely. Oh, just praise Jesus. You'll be okay. Oh, yeah. Listen, even Jesus sweated blood before his crucifixion. So don't give me this nonsense about being fearless, okay? I am legitimately, sincerely scared and terrified about what's happening. It's come to the point where you have right-wing YouTubers bringing in Jared Taylor for an interview. And I've seen this multiple times. You have these YouTubers that are like, we're conservative, Republican, and they're bringing in Jared Taylor. This guy is like literally, he's trying, for decades, this guy has been trying to revive old ass progressive racism. We're talking like 1920s, late 19th century racism shit. This guy is bringing it back. This Jared Taylor guy. He looks like another version of Dennis Rader. I mean, the guy legitimately creeps me out. And he's bringing up old eugenic ideas, old Darwinist, progressive ideas. And you have conservatives that are like, oh, this guy's great. And the reason why so many people are now being more accepting of these sorts of ideas is because of the high crime rate. You have, all these inner cities in America with very high murder rates, Chicago, Detroit, Oakland, very high murder rates. And most of these murders are done by African Americans. It's just a fact. And so people are getting more and more scared of high crime, and they start connecting African Americans with crime, and so they get really nervous. And then in comes a racist and says, hey, we need to make sure that white people's interests are watched and white people's interests are protected. And we have to be against, these other peoples who aren't white. And, the reason why blacks are violent is because of genetics. And we have to go back to eugenic ideas and Darwinism. And if this ideology takes root, before you know it, they're going to have camps and they're going to be doing experiments on non-whites, and it's going to be like the 1930s and 40s over again. Okay, so you have high crime rates in predominantly African American areas. You have whites who are very nervous, and they then look up to racists for protection, or not protection, but they look up to racist for leadership and racist for knowledge. We see this happening in America. We see this happening in Western Europe. And then you have the other side that says, oh, well, Ukraine is great, even though they're full of fascists. Who cares? It is terrifying what's happening, guys. Terrifying. I would be surprised that in the next 10 to 15 years, America doesn't have a civil war. Okay? I'm going to say that again. I would be surprised if in the next 10 to 15 years, America does not have a civil war. And I hate to say this kind of shit, and I don't like to talk about this a lot on my videos because I know that it can be seen as very exaggerative. It can be seen as fear-mongering and all this stuff. But in the next 10 to 15 years, or maybe the next 40 years, I would be surprised. That's if I'm still alive. I would be surprised if we do not have a civil war in the United States. I really believe that because America is so politically polarized. And what's happening is the political spectrum of the United States is morphing into an ugly leviathan. And what I mean by that is it used to be, 10, 20 years ago and before that, it used to be, oh, well, you're a conservative. So that means you're pro-life and you're pro-traditional marriage and you're pro-Christianity. Oh, you're a liberal. That means that you're pro-secularism and you're pro-abortion, you're pro-gay marriage. That's pretty much what it meant, right? That was the political spectrum of America. Now, what you're seeing is people on the left and people on the right coming together, and they're finding a common ground against the so-called elites. So you're seeing liberals or people who have very liberal ideas, people who are now you have people who they hold views that traditionally are considered liberal or leftist, and they're now being favored by conservatives. We saw this best example of this is Milo Yiannopoulos, right? He was like the biggest thing in conservatism in America. All of a sudden, gay guy, sodomite, he's now in the conservative ranks. Biggest thing in conservative ranks. Jesus Christ. Hold on. Can you guys see me, hear me? Are we good? America, all of a sudden, gay guy, sodomite, he's okay. I think we're good. So that's what's happening. And so now you have extremists on the right, extremists on the left. They're coming together. They're coming together. They're finding this overlap. And now you'll see people who are, they have liberal views and they'll support Azov, or people who have conservative views and they're hanging out with people who are pro-gay. You're seeing a lot of this sort of thing. And what's happening is it's the rejection of principles. Like, there is no principle. What matters is what's advantageous for us. If it's advantageous for us to support Ukrainian fascists, then so be it. If it's advantageous for us to support gays, and they're gay Republicans, so be it. Like, there is no integrity. It's all just winning, and it's all about power. And so I think what's going to happen is, as this continues on, this new political monster is just going to masticize. It's just going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And I don't think you're going to be able to even recognize, like, what is a conservative? Like, what does that mean? It's gaining a new meaning, what it is to be a conservative, or what does it mean to be a liberal. I think these things are changing, and there's even infighting amongst the liberals now. Like, there's liberals who disagree with this whole transgender stuff, and then there's liberals who are like, oh no, you have to support it because if you don't, then you're genociding transgender people or some lunacy like that. And so what I will say is that if there is a civil war in this country, here's one piece of advice that I can give. This is if I had to impart any wisdom about this. If there is ever a civil war in the United States, there will be no good sides. That's what I believe. There will be no good sides in this conflict if it happens. Because you're going to have the right wing versus the left wing. And the right wing, you're going to have the left wing holding up the purple, white flag of the transgender stuff, and they're going to have the rainbow flags, and they're going to be saying, oh, we have to fight for abortion rights and for transgender rights and all this stuff. Then you're going to have the other side saying, we need to fight for lowering taxes, and we're going to be fighting for the identity of America, fighting against illegal immigration, and we need to fight for white people. And we also have gays in our ranks, but these gays are right-wing gays, and they're closer to like the ancient Spartans. And so we have the good gays, they have the bad gays. Both sides are going to be corrupt and just evil and reprobate. There will be no good sides if there is a conflict in America. There will be no good sides, and that's my prognostication on that. So what's happening is extremism is becoming more and more acceptable. So it's becoming more and more acceptable on the right to be extremist. And it's becoming more and more acceptable on the left to be extremist. And I think as these two spectrums grow, their views are gradually moving from the Overton window, ideas that would have been, not the Overton, but ideas that would have been considered outside of the Overton window, they're gradually coming to the center of the Overton window. And that's what I fear. And that's what I fear. I fear that one day this this obsession with being white and white identitarianism, I'm afraid that is becoming more and more acceptable in the right. And I think what helped push this identitarianism is the left being obsessed with identity politics. So the left for decades has been obsessed with, oh, this person is black and this person is black and the 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 black. And they're so obsessed with it that and they're like, well, white people are this and white people are that. And then black people are this and black people are that. And what happens is the other side of the spectrum, the right-wing side, says, oh, they're so obsessed with people being black and they express themselves so negatively towards white people, then we're now going to emphasize being white. And so you have this polarization leading to the extreme ends becoming more close to the center of the Overton windows. I think that's what's happening. I don't know. I'm procrastinating. I'm pontificating a lot here. The conservatives have very few guys, though. Let me think. Hold on about that. Extreme left and extreme right are the same, just two sides of the same coin. They only change their outer appearance, but inside they are just as rotten. Globally, no. The right is huge. I don't think the right is as small. I think people have this idea that, the world is just becoming so liberal and so progressive and so... It's just not true. It's just not true, guys. And I think we agree here. Globally, the right is huge. I mean, the right is humongous, guys. Even in Europe, I used to think... Many years ago, I used to think that Europe was like super liberal and everybody was liberal, and that's sort of the impression that is given to us. But when you saw the refugee crisis, that refugee crisis really brought the right out in Europe, and now it's to the point where you have the Sweden Democrats, a party literally founded by SS members, now one of the most popular parties in Europe. I remember in Sweden, I remember in high school hearing about Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, and Geert Wilders was struggling to get a seat in the Dutch parliament, and it seemed at that point that there was no hope for his party. Now Geert Wilders is one of the biggest parties in the Netherlands, so same thing with AFD. AFD now is a big party, so the right is a force to be reckoned with. And what has been happening within what has been happening, I think, since this last decade is certain events and certain rhetoric has pushed people more and more into right-wing political ideology or right-wing identity politics. So, parking 1 million refugees into Germany angered a lot of people. And understandably so. It's understandable why people would get angry at that. And the dangerous reality is that this pushes people into right-wing ideology, and that can lead to more destruction. The same thing with left-wing identitarianism or left-wing identity politics. Oh, well, black people need their space, and let's have a day in the university just dedicated to black folks, and black this and black that and black this, and then, well, white people, it's okay to call white people the C word. It's okay to call white people slurs. It's okay to talk bad about white people. That's okay. And that angers a lot of white folks, and it gets them angry. And when people are angry about their people being attacked, then they can become the very racist that you are claiming to be against. And it's just very dangerous. We're seeing the world transitioning. We're seeing the world transitioning back to the extreme ideologies of the past. That's what we're seeing, everybody. We're seeing a very, very scary transition. We have to go through the valley, and I don't think it would take very much for us to get there. Even in China, the CCP are considered. Yeah, they can see. China is very conservative. China is a very, very conservative country. Yeah, you're seeing it in Japan. You're seeing. I mean, it's just everywhere. You're seeing this sort of thing. This extreme political polarization and division. Like for example, this transgender person in, I hate using that word, but this transgender person in Tennessee, just murders a bunch of kids in a school because she hates Christians. You're seeing this violence, ideological violence. It's very scary stuff, guys. It's very scary, and I'm sincerely, it just really worries me. And lately, I've been so doomerish. I've just been an absolute doomer. And this doomer arc in my life, it's been going on since 2019, but it's getting worse because I see what's happening in America. I see the hatred towards the police. I see an increase in sympathy for criminals. The rioting that took place in 2020, that really worried me. And it's not just the rioting that worries me, it's the ideology of the rioting. It's the ideology behind the rioting. It's the foundation, the spiritual foundation of the rioting. Because it's not just the rioting, it's how people will accept that behavior as okay because some guy died while he was being arrested by the police. All of a sudden that justifies massive amounts of destruction. And then what happens in the midst of all this is that the other side gets extremely worried, extremely scared, and they become even more defensive. And then you have the right wing saying, oh, look, if we don't become extreme, these people are going to kill us. And so you have this polarization, and this is what foreshadows civil wars. This is what foreshadows civil wars. It's not just, oh, well, people decide to kill each other. No. Many things happen before a civil war erupts. Many things. You look at the Lebanese Civil War. It was, okay, you had the Lebanese Civil War. Before the war, what happened years before the war? What events presaged the Civil War? Well, you had Palestinian refugees moving into Lebanon. Lebanese didn't like that. Then the Lebanese abused the Palestinians. They say you can't work if you're Palestinian. The only job you can get is construction. So they limit the job opportunities of Palestinians. PLO comes in. PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, comes in and says, oh, well, Palestinians are being abused by the Maronites, the Christian Lebanese. We need to fight for the rights of Palestinians. So PLO begins to do terrorism. PLO begins to do massacres. And then, after so many terrorist attacks, Maronites get military training from Israel, and the Maronites begin to do massacres on Palestinians. Palestinians, in turn, do a massacre on the Lebanese. Lebanese do more massacres on the Palestinians. And it just, this war in Lebanon went on and on and on and on. It started out in the 80s, late 70s, I think. And then it just continued on into the 1990s. I mean, it went on for decades, this war. All because people refuse to respect the other side. You want to talk about slavery or you want to talk about, what happened in Jim Crow in the South, fine. But be respectful. Don't sit there and say, oh, white people, you owe us money and we want $5 million for every African American and you're still racist. And if you're white and you're not in favor for Black Lives Matter, then your silence is support of racism. And if you support the police, then you support racism. If you're a police officer, then you're the muscle for a racist system. And eventually people will have enough. And there's a breaking point. Every human being has a breaking point. And when you go past that threshold, watch out. People will explode and they will commit atrocities and they will commit excessive violence and it becomes ugly. It becomes ugly. So when it's like nobody wants to respect the other side, Same thing with Lebanon. Palestinians, okay, they moved in. Okay, well, allow them opportunity. Blend them into the society. No, we can't have that. So they limited their opportunity for work. They restricted them. They abused them. Then, boom, terrorism. And then the PLO goes too far. Then the Maronites, they react. They go too far. They commit Karantina massacre, El Zatar massacre. And then Palestinians commit what? They commit Damour massacre. And then after that, there's Sabra and Shatila. Maronites butchered thousands of Palestinians, and it's just ugly, and it goes on and on and on. It doesn't end. It doesn't end. We have to be moderate. We have to be respectful. Are there bad cops? Sure, but we can acknowledge that the bad cops are a very small minority. Most cops, almost all cops, are doing good. There's 65 million interactions between police and civilians every single day in this country. And they find a few little events that are not even necessarily bad, and they say, look how bad the police are. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to get people against authority. Because if you can get people against the authority, then you bring instability, you bring chaos, you destroy society. It's that simple. It's that simple. Like I saw this thing, there's this guy, his name is Rashad, I think his name is Rashad Richey. He's got this show called The Bullpen, and he's always, bashing the police. And he shows a story, and he says, look, cops killed this poor black guy as he was holding a baby. So you think and they show you a picture of the guy with the baby, and it looks like a family photo, and it's so nice, and he wants you to think that this guy is just holding his baby and cops kill him. But then you look at the story. The guy kidnapped his girlfriend, his baby's mama, kidnaps his girlfriend, shoots at her twice, brutally beats her, has the baby in his hand, has a gun also on him. Cops say drop the kid, he refuses, the cops kill him. Now that's very different from, the cops just came in and killed some poor soul holding his baby. But they present things in a way to anger people. They want people to be angry against the police. Why? Because they want chaos and disorder. They want chaos and disorder. So, do not repay evil for evil. Absolutely. And that's the reason why. That's the reason why God says, do not repay evil with evil. Why? Because you continue the cycle of violence. It doesn't end. It doesn't end. And that's why you have civil wars. That's why you have atrocities. That's why you have massacres. That's why. And it's scary. It's so scary to see the path that this country is heading towards. It's so scary to see the path that the world is heading towards. It's so scary. And they'll say, well, they'll say, oh, this guy is really a woman. And you say, no, he's not. He's a guy. He's a cross-dresser. He's a guy who you can slap a suit on a monkey. He's still a monkey. I mean, this guy is a guy. They say, oh no, it's a woman. And if you deny that, then you're genociding the transgender people, and you are now a murderer, and now you deserve death. That's a lot of people, not a lot, but there are people who think this way. And then they disrespect people. They disrespect the sentiments of people when they put a guy in a dress on a beer can. And most people disagree with this, right? Most people reject this ideology. But the fact that it's on a beer can, the fact that it's even a point of discussion tells us one thing. America has become a mentally ill society. It's a mentally ill society. It's a mentally ill society. If it wasn't a mentally ill society, this would not even be a point of discussion. Well, most Americans reject the transgender stuff. Oh, that's true. But the fact that it's a point of discussion, there's a problem. It's like in the city of San Antonio, they did a referendum. They said, okay, we want to put it to a vote whether or not to charge people with a felony if they steal a bunch of products worth a certain amount of money. I think the amount was like $737. So if you steal $730 something worth in goods, you will not be charged with a felony. It'll be a misdemeanor. Now, 70-something% of the people voted no. They don't want that because they know it brings anarchy. But the fact is that 28% of the people in the city of San Antonio voted yes. That's a lot of people. Sure, they're the minority. But that means out of every 100 people, there are 28 assholes who think that it's okay to steal and it's not a felony offense. You see what's happening here? America is decaying. It is becoming a mentally ill society. It's a mentally ill society. The hatred towards the police, the hatred towards authority, the sympathy towards criminals, all these things are a sign that the society is decaying and it's becoming, it's mentally ill. California is already mentally ill. Okay? California is mentally ill. The mental illness is spreading like a cancer. It's coming to Texas. It's coming to Tennessee. It's here. The cancer has already spread. It's metastasizing. It's growing. You know, and the train is already set. There's nothing we can do to stop this, because most people are in a way infected. Because if I say, look, this transgender stuff is bad. Oh yeah, we agree with you. But then all of a sudden, you'll see, oh, a transgender conservative who's against the transgender movement. What the hell is up with that? Remember Blair White? Remember that nonsense? Transgender conservative with a huge following on YouTube. How does that happen? So what happens is the left comes up with some kooky ass idea like transgenderism or, you know, homosexuality. I mean, they don't come up with it, but they push it. Then you have conservatives. You have people in the conservative ranks who say, "Oh no, this guy's a gay conservative. He's okay. Oh, this is a gay transgender person. He's okay. He's okay." What? What's going on here? What's going on here? Insanity. That's what I'm saying. If there is ever a civil war in America, there will be no good sides. There will be no good sides because they're all freaking insane. January 6th rioters were all a bunch of lunatics. The BLM rioters, lunatics. They're all crazy. Oh, some of them are government agents. Yeah, there were government agents or operatives in the BLM riots, and there were operatives in the right-wing riot in the Capitol. Okay, whatever. But still, they were lunatics. They were lunatics in their midst. Lunatics in their midst. It's very depressing, guys. That's why I become a total freaking doomer, and that's why I drink Ouzo. Anyway, it's almost 8 p.m. Eastern time. I think I'm done. Guys. I'm tired. This streaming stuff, it just drains me. It really does drain me, guys. All right, I'm gonna go eat something. It was great talking to you guys. Probably have some new content by tomorrow. God bless you guys. Have a good weekend. And understand that life is bittersweet. Not all bitter. It's not all sweet, but it's bittersweet.